Imagine being so fucking powerful that ninjas drop to their knees just from your presence. He was born with the heart of the King of Destruction inside his chest. Every god, every monarch, every so-called legend, they all felt it the moment he walked into the room. The dragon chose him. Multiple women chose him because he is him.
The world did not end with a whisper. It ended with a roar that cracked the sky in half. If you had been standing on the highest watchtower in the Hidden Leaf Village on the night of October the 12th, 7 years after the Nine-Tails attack, you would have seen the heavens split open, a wound in the clouds, a gash of red light pouring through like blood from a god's wrist. You would have screamed, you would have prayed, you would have been right to do both. But the wound did not open over the village. It opened over the forest of death, and inside that forest, face down in the cold black mud, lay a 7-year-old boy who had already learned what hatred tasted like. Naruto Uzumaki was bleeding from his stomach, his shoulder, the side of his head, and his left thigh. His small hands were curled into fists. His teeth were locked together so hard one of them had cracked. He had been crying earlier. He had stopped about an hour ago when crying started to feel pointless. 3 corrupt Anbu stood over him in the moonlight. Their masks were generic. Their hearts were rotten. They were the kind of men who had whispered to each other in dim bars about the demon child for years. And tonight, one of them had finally said the thing the other 2 were waiting to hear. The Hokage will mourn him publicly. Privately, he'll thank us. The seal is weakening. Every shinobi in the village can feel it. We end this tonight. We save thousands of lives later. Just do it. Stop talking and do it. The one in the dog mask raised his blade. Naruto, lying in the mud, opened his eyes. They were blue then. Stubborn. Ordinary. The eyes of a boy who refused on principle to die because somebody told him to. His heartbeat was slowing. His breath was thin. Behind a great cage in the back of his mind, the nine-tailed fox was screaming and clawing at iron bars too thick to break, throwing every drop of demonic chakra it could muster at a body too small and too damaged to receive it in time. Kurama, in that moment, was furious. The fox had finally found a host strong enough to be interesting, and 3 meat-headed humans were about to ruin him. "Stay alive, brat," the fox snarled into the dark. "Stay alive, you stupid stubborn." The blade started to come down, and then the sky tore open. A dimensional rift split the clouds above the forest of death like a knife through paper. The thunder of it rolled across 3 countries. Birds for 50 miles took flight at once. Every awake shinobi in the land of fire turned their head toward the same horizon. Every sleeping one woke up with their heart hammering for reasons they could not explain. Through the wound in the sky fell a star. It was burning. It was vast. It was older than anything in this dimension by orders of magnitude that the human mind cannot really hold. It came down in a column of red light that turned night into noon, and the closer it got to the earth, the more the world bent toward it, like the gravity of a small planet. The corrupt Anbu froze with their blades raised. The star slammed into the forest of death. Trees within a mile of the impact ceased to be trees. They became ash mid-existence. The shockwave traveled outward in a perfect ring, flattening grass, pushing the river off course, knocking the windows out of homes in the western quarter of the village. The crater that opened beneath the impact was 300 meters across and glowing, and in the center of it, suspended in the air, was a heart. It was crimson. It was the size of a fist. It was beating, and it had once belonged to Antares, the monarch of destruction, the king of berserk dragons, the oldest and most feared of the 9 monarchs of the outer realms. He had ruled empires before language existed. He had set fire to galaxies for sport. He had stood on a battlefield where the gods themselves came to argue with him, and he had won the argument. He had also, finally, lost the war. His body was elsewhere, scattered across realities. His soul was burning out. The last and most stubborn organ of his existence had fallen through the dimensional wound like a seed through a crack in a wall, looking for ground that would receive it. Antares, in his final flicker of awareness, looked through the heart's senses and saw the boy in the mud, bleeding, outnumbered, outmatched, refusing to die. The Dragon Monarch laughed. It was the first time he had laughed in 3,000 years. The laugh was deep and rough and full of something that had once been joy. You refuse to die, mortal, even now? With 3 blades on your throat and your blood feeding the dirt? He felt the boy's heartbeat. Stubborn, tiny, refusing. Then take my heart. Become the new apex of destruction. The heart shot forward. It crossed the distance between the crater and Naruto's chest faster than light could think about it. The corrupt Anbu did not see it. None of them ever saw it. The heart slammed into Naruto's sternum, sank through skin and bone like both were water, and merged with the boy's own heart on contact. The forest ignited. Every leaf within half a mile combusted at once. The mud beneath Naruto turned to glass. A column of crimson energy tore upward through the canopy and split the sky a second time. The 3 corrupt Anbu did manage to scream for about a quarter of a second before the ambient heat of the awakening erased them. They did not die. They were vaporized into nothing. There were no bodies left to find. There were no bodies left to look for. Inside Naruto's mindscape, the 9 tails, Kurama, the great fox, the terror of the shinobi world, the Biju who had once leveled entire mountain ranges in a temper, pressed itself flat against the back of its cage and made a sound that no living person had ever heard it make before. It whimpered, pure, primal fear. The kind of fear that lives below memory. The kind of fear small animals feel when something with eyes too big for the world looks down at them. Kurama's tails tucked under its body, its ears pinned back. Its enormous chakra recoiled and shrank until it was the size of a house cat in the corner of the cage. Something else had moved into Naruto's mindscape. Something that did not need a cage. Antares was a presence the size of a continent. A red dragon as old as the concept of fire. He coiled around the seal that held Kurama, and Kurama, who had eaten gods before breakfast, did not move a single muscle. Sleep, little fox, the Dragon Monarch said, in a voice that vibrated through Naruto's bones. You're a passenger now. Kurama curled up tighter and closed its eyes. The fox was a lot of things. Stupid was never one of them. Outside, in the smoking crater, the boy stood up. His wounds were gone. His skin was warm. His hair, which had been dirty blonde, now had streaks of red running through it like veins of fire and stone. The whisker marks on his cheeks had become jagged, sharper, almost tribal. His eyes had changed. They were crimson, slit-pupiled, reptilian. He looked at his hands. He turned them over. He felt the heat under the skin and understood it without being told. There was a king in his chest. The king was friendly to him because the king was now also him. The boy was the king and the king was the boy, and the merger had been total. Antares' body was gone. Antares' power was here. Naruto, age 7, looked up at the sky. The wound in the heavens was closing. The clouds were stitching themselves back together. The forest around him was smoking ash. He was the most dangerous being on the planet. He was also still 7 years old, and the first thing he said, in a voice slightly deeper than it had been an hour ago, was, "I want ramen." He turned and walked out of the crater. The grass that touched his bare feet ignited and went out as he passed. The smell of burning wood followed him for a quarter mile. Somewhere in the village, the Hokage was already on his feet, already moving, already issuing orders that would arrive far too late to do anything about anything that had just happened. By the time the Anbu arrived at the impact site, there was nothing there but a glass-bottomed crater and the smell of ozone. By the time they tracked Naruto down, he was sitting on a stool at Ichiraku Ramen with a bowl in front of him, ordering his 4th helping. Tochi, behind the counter, kept glancing at his eyes, which were back to blue mostly, with little flecks of red around the iris, and then glancing away. Ayame had stopped breathing twice in 5 minutes and started again only because her body insisted. The Anbu watched from the rooftops. They reported back. They were specific. The boy was fine. The boy was eating. The boy looked at the rooftop where they were hiding without turning his head, smiled around a mouthful of noodles, and waved. The Anbu left. The Hokage in his office got the report and put his face in his hands for a very long minute. The 3rd Hokage was a wise man. He had lived through 3 great wars. He understood, from the moment he read the report, that the village's relationship with Naruto Uzumaki had just changed in a direction he could neither define nor reverse. He was correct. The years that followed were strange ones for everyone except Naruto. The academy did its best to behave like a school. The teachers tried to teach, the students tried to learn. Naruto sat in the back with his feet on his desk and read books that were not in the curriculum. Iruka-sensei never made him take his feet down. The first incident happened in his second year. A boy named Daichi, who was older and bigger and had been bullying smaller kids since he could walk, decided that the demon kid needed to be put in his place. He cornered Naruto behind the academy after class. He had two friends with him for backup. He cracked his knuckles and made a speech about how nobody was scared of the orphan freak. Naruto stood with his hands in his pockets. "Walk away," he said. Daichi did not walk away. Daichi swung. What happened next was reconstructed later from the testimony of 3 witnesses, none of whom agreed on the details. What everyone did agree on was the result. Daichi spent 2 weeks in the hospital with internal injuries his doctors could only describe as consistent with falling off a building. His 2 friends were unhurt physically and unrecoverable mentally. They asked to be moved to a different class. The request was approved within the day. After that, students stopped sparring with Naruto. Officially, the academy paired him with practice dummies for safety reasons. Unofficially, every kid in Konoha under the age of 12 had been told by their parents in the same hushed, urgent tone, do not, under any circumstances, pick a fight with the Uzumaki boy. The teachers walked on eggshells. Mizuki tried to set him up with the Forbidden Scroll incident in his 4th year, mostly because Mizuki was a fool. The plan had been to manipulate the demon child into stealing the scroll, then hunt him down and take it back along with all the credit. It went badly. Mizuki found Naruto in the forest. The Forbidden Scroll was open on the ground. Naruto was reading it the way a man reads the back of a cereal box. He looked up when Mizuki landed on the branch above him. "Mizuki-sensei," Naruto said, "you smell like betrayal." Mizuki, who had been planning a long villain monologue, opened his mouth. Naruto raised a hand. The hand glowed red. The branch under Mizuki's feet, the tree it was attached to, and a small grove of trees behind it ignited at once. Mizuki fell out of the burning canopy with his pants on fire. Screaming, he hit the ground, rolled, beat the flames out, and started running. Naruto did not chase him. Iruka, who had arrived a moment later, caught Mizuki at the village wall and brought him in. When Iruka returned to the forest, Naruto was still sitting there, reading the scroll. "You probably shouldn't have that, Naruto," Iruka said. Naruto rolled the scroll back up and handed it to him. "It's poorly organized," he said, like a customer leaving a bad review. "The shadow clone technique is the only useful one, and they buried it in the middle for some reason." Iruka took the scroll. He looked at the boy. He sat down on a stump. "Naruto," he said carefully, "are you happy?" Naruto thought about it. He looked up at the patches of moonlight coming through the trees that hadn't burned. His eyes were blue right now. The red came and went. "I don't know what that word means anymore, sensei," he said. "But I like ramen, and I like you, so probably." Iruka cried a little. He tried not to. Naruto pretended he didn't notice. By graduation day, Naruto Uzumaki was the top of his class. He had not studied. He had not trained in front of anyone. He had simply walked into every test, performed the exact bare minimum required to pass, and walked out. His scores in ninjutsu were perfect. His scores in taijutsu were perfect. His scores in genjutsu were perfect. His written exam was perfect. And Iruka had checked it twice, because the answers were written in the boy's loose, lazy hand and contained no errors of any kind. The teacher's lounge held a small, terrified celebration when his graduation was made official. He was someone else's problem now. Someone else, as it turned out, was Kakashi Hatake. Team 7 assembled on a Tuesday morning. Wait, let's not call it that. It was a morning. The morning. The day the most lethal jonin in the village walked into a meeting with a boy who could erase him from the timeline by sneezing. Kakashi was 3 hours late. Naruto sat on the railing of the bridge with his hands in his pockets. The metal beneath him was warm to the touch. The air around him shimmered, the way the air over a road shimmers in summer. Sakura sat as far from him as she could without being rude about it. Sasuke leaned against a post on the opposite end of the bridge and pretended he was alone in the world. Sakura had been trying not to look at Naruto for an hour and a half. She was failing. Every time she glanced at him, the air between them rippled, like he was wearing the world as a coat that didn't quite fit. She said finally. Is the bridge okay? Naruto looked at her. His eyes were blue. They were also faintly glowing, which Sakura had decided to mentally file away as a thing she would think about later in therapy when she could afford one. The bridge is fine, he said. His voice was deep. It had been deep since they were 11. The other students used to whisper about it. It's just, Sakura said. The metal is, never mind. Sorry, I'll stop talking. Sasuke, who had been pretending to ignore everything, muttered, Chish. Naruto turned his head slightly toward Sasuke. He smiled. The smile had teeth. Did you have something to add, Uchiha? No, Sasuke said immediately. Sasuke had spent the last 4 years constructing a story in his own head, where Naruto was a freak with a few flashy tricks, and Sasuke himself was the true elite of their generation. The story was easier to maintain when Sasuke was alone. In Naruto's presence, the story tended to crumple like wet paper, and Sasuke hated it. And he hated Naruto for making him hate it. And he hated himself for hating both of those things. And the result was a permanent muscle tension in his jaw that his dentist would later complain about. The three of them sat in silence for another 40 minutes. Then Kakashi appeared in a swirl of leaves on the railing of the bridge. Yo, he said. Sorry I'm late. A black cat crossed my... You're late, Naruto said. He had stood up. He was looking at Kakashi the way an emperor looks at a courier who has shown up to deliver bad news. I dislike waiting. The 4 words hit the bridge like a bell. Kakashi's single visible eye twitched. He had been a jonin for years. He had been an Anbu captain. He had seen war. He had also gotten the briefing on his new Genin team this morning, and he had read the file marked urgent, Uzumaki, Naruto, and he had laughed at it because the file was the worst kind of intelligence report. Vague. Hysterical. Full of incidents that no functional intelligence officer would believe without footage. He looked at the boy on the bridge now, and the laughter in his chest did something it had never done before. It went away. Kakashi, who had every intention of being a friendly, slightly aloof teacher this morning, decided in the space of one breath that he was going to use the bell test to put this kid in his place. Establish dominance. Reset the dynamic. The boy was a genin. He was a jonin. There were rules to these things. Cute speech, Kakashi said. Let's go to the training ground. They went to the training ground. Kakashi did the speech about the bells. He held up 2 of them. He explained that the one who failed to grab one would be sent back to the academy. He set the timer. He stepped back. Naruto did not move. His hands were still in his pockets. The grass around his feet was beginning to brown. Sasuke was already gone. Vanished into the trees, finding a vantage point. Sakura was crouched behind a stump, trying to remember everything Iruka had ever taught her about traps. Kakashi, in the center of the clearing, sighed and shook his head. Look, Naruto, he said. I get it. You think you're hot stuff. You graduated top of your class. Fine. But there's a gap between a fresh genin and a jonin that you can't. Dragon fear. Naruto did not say it loudly. He said it the way a man tells the time. The world stopped. Kakashi's Sharingan, which he had been keeping covered for politeness, ripped his headband up on its own. The eye saw what the visible one could not. Behind Naruto, in a layer of reality that should not have been visible to anyone, a dragon stood. It was the size of a mountain. Its scales were red. Its eyes were yellow. Its teeth were the length of buildings. It opened its mouth and roared at Kakashi without sound. Kakashi's nervous system shut down. His knees gave out. He went down hard, one knee to the dirt, the other shaking. His lungs forgot what they were for. His Sharingan was tearing up from the strain of holding the image. His breath came in 3 short, useless gasps and then stopped entirely. Behind the stump, Sakura's vision went white. She was not the target of the technique. She still felt it. Her body decided on her behalf to play dead until further notice. She collapsed flat on her face in the grass and pretended to be a leaf. In the trees, Sasuke had been crouched on a branch. He was no longer on the branch. He was on the ground beneath the branch, on his hands and knees, throwing up his breakfast. His Sharingan, which had not awakened yet, was trying to awaken right now, and his body was rejecting it because the body knew, in its oldest and most animal parts, that opening any extra eyes right now would be a bad idea. Naruto walked across the clearing. He stopped in front of Kakashi. He looked down at the man who could not stand up. He reached into the pouch on Kakashi's hip. He took both bells. He tossed one to Sakura, where she lay in the grass. It landed by her hand. She did not move. He tossed one toward the trees. It hit the dirt next to Sasuke, who was still on his knees. Then Naruto leaned down, just a little, and looked Kakashi in his one functioning eye. "A ninja relies on tricks," he said. "A monarch relies on absolute power." He walked back to the center of the clearing. He sat down in the grass, cross-legged, and looked up at the sky. The pressure lifted. Kakashi inhaled like a man surfacing from deep water. He fell forward onto both hands. His vision came back in pieces. His Sharingan was bleeding a little. He sat up slowly. He pulled his headband back down over the eye. He took out his little orange book out of habit because the book was a security blanket, and instead of reading it, he opened it to the back, where there were a few blank pages, and he wrote, in handwriting that was shakier than he would ever admit, "Do not provoke. Pass them immediately. Brief Hokage, possibly the daimyo, possibly the fire god." He shut the book. He stood up. His legs felt like they belonged to somebody else. "Right," he said. His voice came out hoarse. "You all pass." Sakura, in the grass, made a small sound. Sasuke in the trees did not make any sound because he was busy reconsidering every single thing about his life. Naruto, in the middle of the clearing, looked at the sky. "I'd like ramen," he said. They went and got ramen. Kakashi paid. Kakashi did not eat much. Kakashi watched Naruto eat 8 bowls of ramen and tried to figure out, in his head, exactly which of the 7 Hokages he would need to wake up at 3 in the morning to debrief about this. The answer was all of them, and a few who weren't dead yet. 2 weeks later, the Hokage assigned Team 7 their first C-rank mission, bridge construction. A drunk old man named Tazuna, a trip to the land of waves. The official paperwork said it was an escort job and there should be only minor bandit-level resistance. The official paperwork was wrong. They left at dawn. Naruto walked at the front. He always walked at the front. Kakashi, who as the Jonin sensei should technically have walked at the front, did not bring this up because he did not feel like dying today. Tazuna, who had spent the first hour complaining about the genin being too small and weak, had stopped complaining within 5 minutes of meeting Naruto. He kept staring at the back of the boy's head. He kept trying to make eye contact with Kakashi. Kakashi kept giving him a look that said, "Do not, under any circumstances, ask." They were 3 hours into the road through the forest when the first ambush sprung. 2 missing, none. The Demon Brothers. They came out of a puddle in the road, which was a piece of theater. Kakashi clocked immediately. He let them come. He wanted to see how the team reacted. The Demon Brothers came out of the water with their chain weapons stretched between them. They aimed for Kakashi first, which was standard procedure, because killing the Jonin was the way to disable the team. The chain wrapped around Kakashi. It cut him into ribbons. Kakashi vanished in a substitution, the body becoming a log. The Demon Brothers turned towards Sakura and Tazuna. They never reached them. Naruto was already there. He had moved without anyone seeing him move. He was standing between the brothers and the rest of the team with his hands still in his pockets. The Demon Brothers swung the chain at him. It hit him. The chain wrapped around his neck and tightened. Naruto looked at the chain. Then he looked at the 2 missing nin holding it. The chain glowed orange, then white. Then it began to drip, melting like wax. The brothers screamed. They tried to let go of their weapon. The metal of the chain was now welded to their gauntlets. Their gauntlets were welded to their hands. The flesh of their hands was beginning to cook. Naruto closed his fingers around the chain. He pulled. Both missing men were yanked off their feet, dragged through the dirt, and slammed into each other in front of him. Their helmets cracked together. They collapsed, unconscious. Naruto reached up, took the still warm chain off his neck, and tossed it into the bushes. "Tazuna," he said. His voice was friendly. It was also clearly the voice of a man who had just realized that the mission paperwork had lied to him. "We need to have a conversation about what you didn't tell us." Tazuna had a conversation with them. The conversation contained the words, "Gato, the bridge, my country is starving, I lied to get a cheaper rank of mission. Please don't abandon us. And a great deal of crying. Sakura looked at Kakashi. Kakashi looked at Naruto. Naruto was still looking at Tazuna. We continue the mission, Naruto said. Naruto, this is a B rank now, possibly an A, Kakashi said. Protocol. We continue the mission. Kakashi, shut up. They continued the mission. They reached the coast by evening. They took a small boat across to the land of waves. The fog was thick on the water. The mist clung to the boat like wet cloth. The sea was glassy and gray. Halfway across, Naruto leaned over the side and ran a finger through the water. The water boiled where his finger touched it. A thin trail of steam rose behind the boat for the rest of the trip. Sakura, who had watched this happen, made a small whining noise and sat down in the bottom of the boat and put her head between her knees. I'm fine, she told her knees. I'm completely fine. I'm in the boat. The boat is fine. The boy is fine. Everything is. Sasuke-kun, are you okay? Sasuke was not okay. Sasuke had also seen the water boil. Sasuke was in the process of revising, for the 17th time this week, his entire mental model of where he stood in the world. He said, Sakura took it as a yes. The fight on the bridge happened 4 days later. Or rather, the fight by the bridge. Or rather, the fight that took the bridge, the lake, half the surrounding forest, the fishing village, and a sizable portion of Zabuza Momochi's pride along with it. It started, as these things often do, with mist. Zabuza came out of the trees the way a knife comes out of a sheath. The hidden mist jutsu rolled in off the lake and over the bridge, and the world went white. The sun blurred to a smear, sound flattened, the temperature dropped. Sakura instinctively got into a defensive stance over Tazuna. Sasuke reached for a kunai. Naruto sighed. He actually sighed. Like a man being asked to do unpaid overtime. You try to hide from a dragon, he said into the mist, in a puddle of water? He snapped his fingers. It was a small sound. It traveled. The temperature reversed. The mist became hot. The mist became hotter. The mist became scalding. Within 4 seconds, the fog over the lake was no longer fog. It was steam. The water beneath the bridge had gone from cold to lukewarm to a rolling boil. Fish floated to the surface, already cooked. Zabuza's water clones, which he had positioned in tactical spots through the mist, did not dissolve. They detonated. Each one exploded with the sound of a hammer hitting a kettle, sending boiling water in arcs across the bridge. Zabuza was halfway through his ambush when he realized his ambush had become a sauna he had not booked. He stumbled out of the steam, arms half burned, the cloth around his face soaked and smoking. His enormous sword, the executioner's blade, the Kubikira Bocho, an A-rank weapon famous across 3 nations, was already swinging. He aimed for Naruto's neck. He put everything he had into it. Force, weight, momentum, killing intent. Naruto raised his right hand. Crimson scales crawled up from his wrist to his fingers. They locked into place along his palm, draconic scales. The Kubikira Bocho hit the palm. It bounced. Then it stuck. Then it began to glow. The metal around Naruto's hand turned orange, then white. Then it began to drip. Actual molten steel sliding off the legendary blade like wax off a candle. Zabuza stared at his sword. The sword had been with him for 14 years. It was the most reliable thing in his life. It was currently melting. Naruto looked at the dripping steel. His expression was the face you make when a child gives you a broken toy and asks you to fix it. He tipped the ruined blade away with one finger. Then he punched Zabuza in the chest. One punch. No wind up. No technique announced. Zabuza's sternum gave way like dry timber. His body folded around the impact and went airborne, across the bridge, over the boiling lake, and slammed into the cliff face on the far bank with the sound of a cantaloupe being dropped from a roof. He hit hard enough to leave an outline of himself in the rock. He slid down. He was breathing. He was unconscious. He would be unconscious for some time. In the silence that followed, somewhere in the trees, a small voice said, "Sensei?" Haku, who had been watching from a hidden vantage in the canopy, was wearing the Hunter Nin mask. The mask had a red wave painted across it. Inside the mask, Haku's heart was hammering. Haku had been Zabuza's tool for years. Haku's purpose was to protect Zabuza. Haku's purpose had just been hit halfway across a bay by a 13-year-old. Haku moved. The crystal ice mirrors formed faster than the eye could follow. 21 mirrors, 3 rows of 7, perfectly arranged in a hexagonal dome around Sasuke, who had been the closest target. Sasuke's Sharingan had finally awakened, one tomoe per eye, and he was reading the mirrors, trying to find the real Haku among the reflections. He was failing. Senbon needles came at him from every angle. He blocked some. He blocked many. He missed some. He went down on one knee with 3 needles in his shoulder and 2 in his thigh. Naruto walked across the bridge toward the dome. He was unhurried. Inside the dome, Haku flickered between mirrors, a blur of speed, throwing Senbon in volleys. Sasuke, on one knee, looked up at the approaching figure of his teammate through the gaps between mirrors. For a moment Sasuke would deny ever happened, until much later in his life, he was relieved. Then the moment ended, because relief required Naruto to be a teammate, and the figure walking across the bridge was something else. Naruto reached the edge of the dome. He stopped. He opened his mouth. Inside his throat, crimson light gathered. It was the color of a sunset on a planet where the sun is dying. It was the color of hot iron. It was bright enough that Sasuke inside the dome saw it through the ice and through whose after images, and his Sharingan reflexively tried to copy the technique and failed because there was no hand sign and there was no chakra signature, and the Sharingan, for the first time in its long, proud history, simply did not know what it was looking at. Breath of destruction. The beam left Naruto's mouth. It was about as wide as a man's wrist when it started. It was a lance of pure crimson light. It hit the dome of mirrors and the dome ceased to exist. Not shattered, not melted, erased. The mirrors were there, then they weren't. The space where the mirrors had been was a tube of white-hot air. The beam continued. It crossed the bridge, it crossed the bank. It crossed the forest beyond the bank. Trees did not fall. Trees were absent. A line of forest 1 mile long and 10 meters wide was simply gone, replaced by smoking glass. The beam reached a hill in the distance. The hill was reduced by a quarter of its height. Birds in the sky above the beam's path fell out of the air, dead from the air pressure alone. The beam ended. Sasuke was on the bridge. The dome was gone. The Senbon in his shoulder fell to the ground because Haku's chakra control over them had cut out. Haku, the real Haku, was lying in the smoking trench that used to be a forest. The mask had cracked down the middle. The cloth around the body was half burned. The chest still rose and fell, just barely. Naruto walked into the smoking trench. The glass beneath his feet shifted with each step. He reached down and lifted Haku by the collar, raising the slim body up to eye level. Haku's eyes flickered open. They were brown. They were tired. They were, against all odds, unafraid. "You fight well for a human," Naruto said, looking at the half-broken mask. "I will spare you, but only because I respect your loyalty to your master." He set Haku down in the dirt beside the trench. Gently, he stood up and turned away. The conversation was over. Behind him on the bridge, Kakashi had not moved in some time. Sakura was crouched beside Tazuna with her mouth open. Tazuna was on the ground, on his hands and knees, in the position of a man who has either fainted or just become extremely religious. Sakura turned her head slowly to Kakashi. "Kakashi-sensei," she whispered. Is Naruto a real person?" Kakashi did not answer for a long moment. He was watching the smoke rise out of the new canyon. He was thinking about the report he was going to have to file. "Sakura," he said, "go check on Sasuke." Sakura went and checked on Sasuke. Sasuke was sitting on the bridge with his Sharingan still active and his pupils still dilated. He was breathing fast. His knees were bouncing. He looked up at Sakura. He looked down at his hands. He looked at the smoking trench in the forest. He said, "Sakura." "Yes, Sasuke-kun. How am I supposed to surpass that?" Sakura did not have an answer. Down the bridge, Gado's hired thugs, about 50 of them, who had been waiting in the wings to clean up after Zabuza killed everyone, were now emerging from the far side of the bridge, looking at the smoking ruin of where Haku's ice dome used to be. The lead thug, a man with a scar and a sword, raised the sword and shouted something brave. Naruto looked at him. The lead thug's voice cut out. So did everyone else's. The thugs in the back, who couldn't see what was happening in the front, started to ask questions, and the questions also cut out. Naruto walked toward them. He did not draw a weapon. He did not announce a technique. He simply walked. The thugs broke, all 50 of them. They turned and ran. They ran off the bridge. They ran down the road. They ran into the forest. Some ran into the lake and started swimming. Some ran in circles. Two of them ran into each other and knocked each other out and were the only ones who avoided getting caught. Gato, the small man behind all of this, was at the back of the crowd, standing on a podium with two bodyguards. He had been about to give a speech. The speech died in his throat. He turned to run. He did not get to run. Naruto raised his hand and pointed his finger at the man. A small thread of crimson light traveled the length of the bridge. It was no thicker than a piece of yarn. It crossed the distance in a fraction of a second. It hit Gato in the chest. Gato, his bodyguards, and the wooden podium they were standing on simply disappeared. There was no blood. There was no scream. There was a small puff of ash and a faint smell of burned silk. The bridge was quiet. Tazuna, still on his hands and knees, made a sound that started as a sob and ended as a laugh. "It's over," Tazuna said. He laughed louder. "It's over. We're free. The country's free. Naruto walked back to the team. He stopped beside Kakashi. "The mission is complete," he said. "Yeah," Kakashi said. "It is. I'd like ramen." "There's no ramen here, Naruto. We're in the land of waves." "Then the mission is incomplete." Kakashi laughed for the first time in 3 days. It came out a little broken. He patted Naruto on the shoulder. The shoulder was warm. The shoulder was warmer than was natural. "We'll get you ramen at home, kid." Behind them, Zabuza was beginning to stir at the foot of the cliff. He was alive. He was barely alive. He would survive. He would carry Haku away into the country with the rest of the small fortune Tazuna had managed to scrape together as gratitude. Years later, in a small bar in a small town in the north, an old man with a sword and his soft-eyed companion would drink quietly and refuse to talk about the boy on the bridge, except to say, "We're alive because he allowed it." The bridge would be named, eventually, the Great Naruto Bridge. The villagers had voted. The vote had been 100%. It was the only thing in the country's long history that had ever achieved 100%. Word reached the Hokage 2 days before the team did. When Team 7 walked back into Konoha, the gate guards stared at them like they were ghosts. The mission report Sarutobi received from Kakashi was 11 pages long. He read it twice. He drank a cup of tea between readings. He read it a third time. He summoned Jiraiya by carrier toad. Jiraiya arrived 3 nights later, climbing in through the office window because he was Jiraiya, and that was his entrance. "Sensei," he said, "this report is either the most exaggerated piece of fiction in the history of the Leaf, or you and I are about to have a problem." "Read it again," Sarutobi said. Jiraiya read it again. "This is real," Jiraiya said. "Isn't it?" "It's real." Jiraiya sat down on the desk. He scratched his chin. He looked very old for a moment. "Sensei, I need to see him. He's at Ichiraku." "Of course he is." Jiraiya went to Ichiraku. Naruto was on his 5th bowl. Jiraiya sat down beside him and ordered miso ramen. Tochi served him and walked very fast back to the kitchen. "You're the toad pervert," Naruto said, around a mouthful of noodles. "I'm Jiraiya of the Sannin," Jiraiya said. "That's what I said." Jiraiya laughed despite himself. He liked the kid already. There was a cold weight under the boy's voice that did not match a 13-year-old, and the weight was not pretending. It was real. It had been earned somehow. Jiraiya, who had spent his life around the kind of people who pretended at strength, recognized the difference at once. "I'm going to be straight with you, kid," Jiraiya said. "Please. I want to take you on as a student. The Chunin exams are in a month. After that, if you survive, and I'm using that word as a courtesy, not a real concern, I'm going to take you on a training trip. There are people coming for you. Bad people. They're called the Akatsuki. They want what's inside you, or rather they want the fox. They have no idea about the other thing, and the other thing is going to kill them when they find out." Naruto chewed his ramen. He swallowed. He looked at Jiraiya. His eyes for 1 second were red. "Akatsuki," he said. "Yes." "Tell me their names." Jiraiya did. Pain, Konan, Itachi Uchiha, Kasame Hoshigaki, Sasori, Deidara, Hidankakuzu, Zetsu, Tobi. Naruto memorized each one. "When they come for me, I will end them." "That's the plan, kid. I'd like to skip the Chunin exams. They sound boring." "You can't skip them. Politics." Naruto thought about it. He stirred his ramen. "Fine," he said. "I'll go to the Chunin exams. I will end them. Faster." "Thank you," Jiraiya said. He paid for both bowls. Tochi noticed. Tochi cried a little bit. because nobody had ever paid for Naruto's ramen before. Tochi was not the only one who cried that month, but he was the only one whose tears were uncomplicated. The Chunin exams arrived on the heels of summer. Foreign Genin teams came pouring into Konoha. Bright headbands, sharp eyes, enough killing intent in some of them to murder a small horse. The streets filled with noise, the training grounds filled with strangers, the Chunin proctors filled with regret. Team 7 walked into the first stage of the exams together. Sakura was nervous. Sasuke was sullen. Naruto was eating an apple. Kabuto, the long-haired trader in spectacles who had been undercover for years, made his usual rounds. He was in the middle of his information broker speech when his eyes lit on Naruto. The speech caught in his throat. "And you are?" Kabuto asked. "Naruto Uzumaki." Kabuto's hands trembled around his ninja info card. The card he had on Naruto Uzumaki said, "Genin, Hidden Leaf, Possible Jinchuriki, Low Threat." The card was 3 weeks old. The card was already wrong, and Kabuto, who had survived as a spy by reading people the way other men read maps, looked at Naruto and felt every alarm in his body go off at once. He smiled and bowed and excused himself. He went directly to the bathroom and sent an emergency message to Orochimaru. The message said only one line: "Reconsider." Orochimaru did not reconsider. Orochimaru never reconsidered. Orochimaru would, in approximately 72 hours, arrive at a clearing in the Forest of Death and meet the boy in person and discover, in a way he could never have prepared for, what reconsidering felt like. The first stage of the exams was a written test. Naruto scribbled answers without looking at the paper. He got a perfect score. The proctor, Abiki, looked at the paper and looked at the boy and said nothing. He passed Team 7 with a small, polite nod. He had seen the file. He had also been at the bridge when Team 7 came home, and he had seen the way Naruto walked, and Ibiki was a man who had survived the worst of 3 wars by knowing when to nod politely at someone and let them by. The second stage was the Forest of Death. Anko Mitarashi stood at the gate of the forest with her trench coat open and her tongue out and her usual grin, and the grin slipped about a centimeter when Team 7 walked up. "Brat," she said to Naruto. "Snake Charmer," Naruto said back. She laughed. She was the only proctor that day who laughed. She handed them their scroll and slapped Naruto on the back and told them, "Try not to break anything I can't build the Hokage for." They went in. They had been in the forest for about 6 hours when the wind changed. The wind in the Forest of Death is normally consistent, humid, slow, full of the smell of rotting leaves. Now the wind reversed direction. It carried something across the trees that none of the Genin teams scattered through the forest had ever felt before. It was killing intent. It was specific. It was so dense it bent the air like heat off asphalt. Sakura went pale. Sasuke's Sharingan activated on instinct. In the trees overhead, 3 crows took off at once and crashed into each other in a panic. Naruto stopped walking. He raised his head. He sniffed the air. Then, for the first time since the bridge, he smiled. The smile was small. It was also the smile of a man who has been waiting for someone to RSVP to a party and just received the response. "Sakura, Sasuke, step back." "What is it?" Sakura asked. "A snake." Orochimaru came out of the trees. He had the form of a grass kunoichi. The form was beautiful and wrong. The eyes were yellow, the smile was wide. The killing intent rolled off the body like smoke off a fire, and Sakura, despite Naruto's warning, dropped to her knees and threw up. Sasuke's Sharingan locked. His body refused to move. He was frozen in the kind of fear that does not have edges. The grass kunoichi stopped at the edge of the clearing. It looked at Naruto. Her smile widened. My, the little Jinchuriki. Word of you has traveled." "A snake," Naruto said, daring to slither in the presence of a dragon. His voice was deeper than usual. The trees around the clearing were beginning to brown at the edges of their leaves. Kabuto, who had been watching from a distance with an instruction to assist Orochimaru, had already turned around and started walking in the other direction. "How insolent," Naruto said. Orochimaru's smile flickered for a moment. Then the smile widened again, because Orochimaru was a creature whose only god was curiosity, and curiosity had just been handed a feast. "You speak well for a Genin," he said. "Show me your power, child. Let me see what makes you so very interesting." He bit his thumb. He flashed through hand signs faster than a normal eye could follow. He slammed his palm onto the forest floor, summoning jutsu, manga. The earth ruptured. The forest of death is a big place. The clearing it had erupted in suddenly became a smaller clearing, and then no clearing at all, because Manda, the great purple serpent of the Ryuchi cave, the boss snake, hundreds of meters long, coiled up out of the smoke and the splintered trees and rose into the sky above them, his head as wide as a building, his fangs as long as flagpoles, his tongue as long as a road. Manda hissed. The hiss flattened a square mile of canopy. "Eat the boy," Orochimaru said. Manda struck. Naruto raised a hand. With his thumb and index finger, he drew a small circle in the air in front of him. The circle was no bigger than a coin. It tore. Spatial manipulation. He stepped into the tier. The clearing, from Orochimaru's perspective, suddenly contained no boy. A second tier opened in the sky directly above Manda's skull. Naruto stepped out of it. He came down with the weight of a falling building. He brought his foot down, a single stomp, onto the top of Manda's enormous head. The snake's skull met the earth. The earth met the bedrock. The bedrock met the limit of what bedrock can be asked to do. The forest shook for half a mile in every direction. Trees fell in a perfect ring around the impact. The shockwave reached Anko at the gate, who was leaning on the wall, and she stood up straight and said, "Oh no." Manda was not dead. Manda was unconscious. Manda would wake up in the snake realm 3 days later with a headache he would carry for the rest of his immortal life, and a sudden new opinion about who his summoner ought to be. Manda dispersed in a puff of smoke. Naruto landed in the crater. He rolled his shoulders. Orochimaru was no longer smiling. Orochimaru, for the first time in 17 years, was experiencing an emotion he had thought he was incapable of. It was located somewhere between alarm and respect. It was profoundly unwelcome. He launched himself. He came at Naruto with the kind of speed that breaks the world. He elongated his neck 20 meters in a heartbeat, and his mouth split open, and his fangs grew long, and the curse mark was already on the tip of his tongue, ready to be applied. He had decided, in the second of contact, that he was going to skip the Sasuke contingency entirely. The Uchiha boy was the backup plan. The Uzumaki boy was the prize. He would mark Naruto. He would harvest him later. Naruto's right hand came up. Crimson dragon scales crawled up to his elbow. Draconic scales. Orochimaru's lunging neck, 20 meters of terror, one of the most dangerous things in the shinobi world, entered Naruto's hand, fang first. It stopped. Orochimaru's neck folded around Naruto's grip like a snake hitting a wall. His fangs broke. 2 of them snapped off in Naruto's palm. His tongue bent the wrong way. The curse mark, ready on the tip, simply could not extend any further because Naruto's hand closed around the throat. Orochimaru tried to retract the neck. Naruto did not let him. He gripped, and the audience here is asked to understand what monstrous, total, absolute strength looks like in motion. And he pulled. He tore both of Orochimaru's arms off. The Sanin's body, attached to his elongated neck, was yanked across the clearing. His arms separated from his torso at the shoulders with a sound that the human nervous system would have preferred not to receive. The arms came off in Naruto's free hand. Blood, black, oily, the wrong color, sprayed out of the empty sockets in great arcs that boiled where they touched the ground. Orochimaru screamed. Sakura, on her knees in the bushes, would later report that she had not known the human voice could make that sound. Sasuke, who saw the whole thing from his frozen crouch, would never, for the rest of his life, be able to fall asleep in complete silence. He would always need a fan, or a window, or something, because total silence reminded him of the second between Orochimaru's arms coming off and Orochimaru's scream filling it. Naruto tossed the arms aside. They smoked on the forest floor. He looked at the Sanin. His eyes were burning. Immortality is a myth for insects. Orochimaru's pupils dilated. His mouth opened. He did the only thing he had left to do. He shed his skin. The white form of a younger, paler Orochimaru ripped out of the older one's mouth, leaving the limbless corpse behind like an empty husk. The new body had arms. The new body had legs. The new body did not have a single milligram of the bravery the old one had walked in with. Orochimaru ran. He turned and ran into the trees and did not look back. He ran for 2 hours straight. He ran until he was inside sound territory. He kept running. The legendary Sanin, The man who had stood unblinking in front of the third Hokage and laughed, ran through the woods of 3 nations with both hands shaking and the taste of his own fear coating the back of his throat. And he would never, until the day his various deaths finally caught up with him, speak the name Naruto Uzumaki out loud. The clearing was quiet. Sakura got up off her knees. Sasuke got up off the ground. Both of them looked at Naruto. Naruto picked up one of the discarded arms and looked at it like a man examining a fish at the market. "Useful," he said. He tossed it back into the bushes. "Let's keep moving. We need a heaven scroll." Sakura made a small sound and started walking. Sasuke followed. He did not say a word for the rest of the day. His Sharingan stayed active long after the danger passed because his body had decided on its own that turning the eyes off in Naruto's presence was a poor survival strategy. They cleared the second stage in 19 hours, which was a record. They stole a heaven scroll off another team. Naruto walked up to them, held out his hand, and the team gave him the scroll and apologized. Anko at the tower looked at Naruto and laughed for a full minute. The preliminary round started 2 days later. Hayate, the proctor, with his small persistent cough, drew names. The screen flickered. Naruto Uzumaki versus Kiba Inuzuka. Kiba, who had not been at the bridge, who had not been in the forest, who had heard rumors but discounted them because Kiba was 13 and made of pride, stepped down into the arena. Akamaru, on his head, was already whimpering. Kiba grinned. He cracked his knuckles. "Listen up, dead last," Kiba said. "I don't care what the rumors say. I don't care what big-mouth idiots told you. I'm gonna put you in the dirt." Naruto stood with his hands in his pockets. "Get on with it." Kiba did. He made a speech first, a minute, maybe 90 seconds. He was good at speeches. They were his favorite part of fighting. He covered his combat record. He covered his clan techniques. He covered the various ways Akamaru and he were synchronized. He even did a small dance. The crowd loved him. Naruto did not move. When Kiba ran out of speech, he made his hand sign, fed Akamaru a soldier pill, and mimicry. The two of them spun into the Suga, the fang over fang, a drill of kinetic destruction that had carried generations of Inuzuka clan to victory. They came at Naruto from above. 2 whirling cyclones of tooth and claw. The cyclone hit Naruto. The cyclone stopped, like running into a mountain. The kinetic energy of 2 spinning bodies, traveling at the speed of motorcycles, simply vanished. Kiba and Akamaru unspun midair, hovering for a half-second of stunned confusion above Naruto's shoulder. Naruto looked up at them. He looked back down. He looked at the spot on his sleeve where they had hit him. The sleeve was undamaged. It was, in fact, slightly cleaner. He raised his right hand and backhanded Kiba. The slap connected. Akamaru, by virtue of being on Kiba's head, also caught some of the blow. Both of them went sideways across the arena. Kiba hit the wall first. Akamaru hit the wall second, half a meter to Kiba's left, in a dog-shaped print that would still be visible during the finals a month later. Kiba slid down the wall. He was unconscious before he hit the floor. Akamaru rolled into a small heap beside him and made a small, dog-like sigh. The whole exchange lasted about 4 seconds. The crowd was silent. Hayate looked at the unconscious Inuzuka. Hayate looked at Naruto. Hayate raised his hand and called the match. Winner, Naruto Uzumaki. A small sound began to build in the stands. It was not cheering. It was the sound of 200 trained shinobi all turning at once to the person next to them and saying, in some variation, "Did you just see that? Up in the Kage box?" Hiruzen Sarutobi gripped the armrest of his chair until his knuckles went white. Beside him, the man dressed as the Kazekage, who was in fact Orochimaru wearing one of his better disguises, had gone very, very still in his seat. The Kazekage's plan for the invasion involved many things, and one of those things had involved capturing the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails as a prize. Looking down at the boy in the arena, Orochimaru, behind the Kazekage's mask, felt his hand begin to tremble. He decided, in that moment, that the invasion was going to proceed without the Jinchuriki capture portion. He decided, a few seconds later, that the invasion was going to proceed without him personally being on the front lines. He decided, a few seconds after that he was going to leave the Kazekage's body in the box at the appropriate moment and run very fast in the opposite direction. In the Genin stands, Gaara of the Sand was watching too. His sand had been moving for some time. It had not been ordered to move. It moved on its own, sliding around his feet in a slow circle, hissing softly, pulling itself up his legs in a defensive layer. The sand knew. The sand had spent years being attached to the angriest tailed beast in existence, and the sand knew, on a level Gaara himself had not yet reached, that the boy in the arena was something else. Shukaku, inside Gaara, was screaming. Gaara had never heard Shukaku scream like that. The voice in Gaara's head, which had spent his entire life telling him to kill, 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 was now telling him to hide, to curl up, to find a hole and pour sand over the entrance and stay there. The voice was begging Gaara, who had not slept in 6 years, decided that he might want to sleep tonight. Just for a moment. To clear his head, he looked across the stands at Naruto. Naruto was looking back. Their eyes met for 1 second. Naruto gave a small nod. Gaara, who had never received a nod in his life that wasn't a sentence to some degree of pain, found himself nodding back. Down in the proctor's chamber, Hayate coughed and called the next match. The rest of the prelims passed without incident. Sasuke fought Yoroi and won, mostly by being angry. Sakura fought Ino and they tied. Shikamaru fought Ken and won by being cleverer than was reasonable. Neji fought Hinata and it was bad. Gaara fought Lee and it was worse. Although Gaara, at the moment of breaking Lee's arm, paused and seemed to be having a small internal argument with himself. And Lee left the arena with one arm broken instead of two. The doctors at the hospital noted the injury was more contained than was traditional for Gaara, and they could not explain why. Up in the stands, Naruto watched Lee being carried out and did not say anything. The finals were set for 1 month later. The matchups included Naruto versus Neji. The crowd, which would have to wait a month to find out what happened, spent the entire month talking about almost nothing else. The training month went by quickly. Jiraiya took Naruto out of the village twice. The first trip lasted 3 days and ended with Jiraiya coming back looking like a man who had stared into an oven and asked the oven for fitness advice. The second trip lasted a week and ended with Jiraiya admitting to himself in a small bar that there was nothing in his arsenal he could really teach the boy. He could only show him what other powerful shinobi had done and let the boy file it away for reference. Naruto did learn a few small things on those trips. He learned how to summon toads. He thought it was useful. He learned how to mold sage chakra in theory, even though he never needed to use it. He learned how to sense killing intent with such fine resolution that he could pinpoint a scout from 3 miles away. He also learned, during a training session in the second week, that Jiraiya was actually a very lonely man, and Naruto, on the last night of the trip, sat across from him in a hot spring and listened while Jiraiya talked about his old teammates and Tsunade and Orochimaru and a woman he had loved a long time ago in the Rain Country, and about the prophecy of the Toad Sage and about 1,000 other things. Naruto did not talk much that night, but he listened. Jiraiya, for the first time in years, slept well. When they returned to the village, Naruto walked through the gates 3 days before the finals. Children stopped what they were doing and stared. Adults turned around in the street. A small dog barked at him and then sat down and offered a paw. Naruto bent down and shook the paw. The dog's owner cried for reasons she could not articulate. By the morning of the finals, the stands were full. The crowd was the largest in Konoha's recent history. 3 of the 5 Kages were present in person. Daimyo from 2 countries were in the VIP boxes. Foreign intelligence officers had been given express permission to attend in exchange for the promise that they would, in fact, be honest in their reports. None of them were going to be honest. None of them were going to be believed if they had been. The matchups began. Sasuke had not yet arrived. Kakashi had pulled a stunt with the ordering. The crowd booed the delay. Naruto's match was rescheduled to be first. Naruto walked into the arena. Neji walked in across from him. The crowd quieted. The Hokage leaned forward in his seat. The fake Kazekage gripped his armrest harder than was traditional for a man who was supposed to be neutral. Genma, the new proctor, raised his hand. Begin. Neji did not begin. Neji activated his Byakugan and began his speech. It was a long speech. It covered destiny. It covered the branch family and the main family. It covered the seal on his forehead, the cage bird, the cycle of suffering, the inevitability of fate. It covered Hinata, his cousin, whose softness he despised because softness had no place in a destined world. It covered the futility of Naruto's confidence, the certainty that no matter how hard the loser tried, the loser would lose, and no matter how brightly the wretched fought, they would die wretched, and that the wheel of destiny ground on and on and on and crushed all those beneath it without pity. It went on for some time. Naruto crossed his arms and let him finish. The grass at his feet was beginning to brown. Neji, who was a censor of sorts because of the Byakugan, did not appear to notice. When Neji finally finished, the crowd shifted in their seats. They had come for blood. Naruto uncrossed his arms. "Destiny," he said, "is the excuse the weak use to justify their place in the dirt." The temperature of the arena began to rise. "I bow," Naruto said, "to no fate." Neji's eyes narrowed. The Byakugan saw something, finally. The Byakugan saw, around Naruto's body, an aura the size of a building, and inside the aura, layered like a ghost, the silhouette of an enormous winging thing. The Byakugan's 360 degrees of vision tried to look at the aura from every angle, and the aura, in every angle, was bigger than Neji's vision could contain. He blinked. The image stayed. He charged. Neji was the prodigy of his generation. His taijutsu was the apex of the Hyuga style. His gentle fist was a weapon that bypassed armor and skin and went directly for the chakra system of his opponent, shutting down each of the 361 tenketsu in a body with a series of finger strikes that would render the most powerful jonin a vegetable in seconds. He hit Naruto with the 64 palms. He started fast. He moved faster. 2 strikes, 4 strikes, 8, 16, 32, 64. His fingers connected with Naruto's chest, his ribs, his shoulders, his arms, his stomach. His fingers broke. Neji felt it on the 3rd strike. He felt it on the 5th strike. He felt it on every strike after that. The gentle fist was not bouncing off Naruto. It was hitting Naruto, and the bones in Neji's fingers were giving way against skin that had the density of granite. By the time he reached the 64th strike, all 10 of his fingers were broken in multiple places. His hands were a ruin of crooked digits in white-faced agony. He pulled back, gasping. He stared at his hands. He stared at Naruto, whose shirt was undamaged, who had not moved, who had not so much as flinched. Naruto exhaled. It was a small exhale, a fraction of his aura. The temperature in the arena climbed 30 degrees in an instant. The stone of the floor underneath Naruto softened, the flagstones turning to glass, melting into a small puddle around his feet. The arena trembled. Actual seismic trembles, picked up later by the Earth Country's geological station 200 miles away. The pressure rolled out of him in a wave. Neji tried to stand against it. His legs locked. His knees bent the wrong direction. He could not raise his arms. He could not draw a breath. The Byakugan, still active, saw the aura swelling around Naruto into something the size of a mountain, and Neji's body decided, on his behalf, to stop standing. He went down on both knees. Naruto raised his right hand. He extended one finger. He flicked it. It was a very small motion, the size of a man brushing a moth off his sleeve. Neji left the ground. He flew across the arena like a rag doll thrown by a furious child. His body cleared 60 meters of horizontal distance in less than a second. He hit the far wall of the stadium high up, about 3 stories from the ground, and the wall cratered around his impact. He stuck for a moment. Then he peeled off the wall and slid down to the ground. Genma walked over, checked his pulse, and said, "Winner, Naruto Uzumaki." The crowd was silent for a long, long moment. Then someone, a single person, somewhere in the upper stands, began to clap. It spread. It was hesitant at first. Then it built. Then it became thunder. The crowd of 15,000 was applauding a 13-year-old who had broken every law of taijutsu they had ever been taught. They were applauding because they were terrified. They were applauding because if they did not applaud, they suspected he might notice. In the Kage box, Hiruzen Sarutobi let out the breath he had been holding for the entire fight. Beside him, the fake Kazekage was sweating through his veil. In the Genin stands, Gaara stood up. He was supposed to remain seated. He stood up anyway. He walked down the steps. He passed his siblings without looking at them. He went through the corridor under the stadium. He came out into the arena, where Naruto was still standing. Genma, watching Gaara approach, considered intervening, then considered the alternative. then went and stood by the wall. Gaara stopped 6 paces from Naruto. "You are like me," Gaara said. Naruto looked at him. "No," he said, "I am like nothing." Gaara's sand around his feet was completely still. The voice in his head, Shukaku, had been quiet for the first time in his life since he saw Naruto in the prelims. Gaara had slept the night before. He had slept for 6 hours. He had woken up rested. The world had felt different. The world, looking at Naruto now, felt different again. "My demon," Gaara said, "is afraid of you." "It should be. What are you? A king." Gaara considered this. He looked down at his hands. He looked up at Naruto. "What does a king do? A king ends what should be ended," Naruto said, "and spares what is worth sparing." Gaara was quiet for a long moment. "My father," he said, "ordered the sand and sound to invade your village today." Naruto's eyebrow went up by a millimeter. "During the next match," Gaara said, "a signal. Sand will fall on the spectators. Sound will breach the walls. You're betraying your invasion to me. I do not want to invade. I want to sleep again. I want to keep sleeping." Naruto looked at him for a long moment. He nodded once. "Stand down," he said. "Tell your siblings to stand down. The invasion will end before it begins. Your village will be embarrassed but intact. Your father will not be." "The man in the Kaji box," Gaara said, "is not my father." Naruto's eyes flickered red. "I know." Gaara turned around and walked out of the arena. The crowd, which had been growing restless, hushed again. Genma had been listening to the entire conversation. Genma was frantically trying to signal to Hokage's box without visibly signaling. The Hokage was already on his feet, having read the situation off Naruto's face from across the stadium. The fake Kazekage was already 2 steps toward the door. Then it happened. Feathers fell across the arena. The genjutsu sleep technique blanketed the spectators. Civilians dropped where they sat. Those shinobi alert enough to break it began to rise, weapons drawn. The fake Kazekage threw aside his veil. He revealed Orochimaru's face, pale, half-formed, recently arms regrown, but still patchy, with a haunted look around the eyes that had not been there at the Chunin exams a month ago. He grabbed the Hokage and leaped to the rooftop of the stadium. Behind him, his 4-sound bodyguards leaped up. They erected a barrier, a purple 4-sided dome that sealed the rooftop from interference. In the stands, Sand Shinobi and Sound Shinobi began to attack. In the streets of Konoha, the village walls cracked in 3 places at once. A column of summoned snakes burst through one of the gates. Sannin descended from the trees on the northern wall, and Gaara in the upper stands looked down at Naruto and shook his head once. "Not me." Naruto looked up at the rooftop. The Hokage was old. The Hokage was wise. The Hokage was, in this matchup, going to die. The Hokage had spent his entire career protecting the village, and Orochimaru had brought the bodies of the 2nd and 1st Hokages back from the dead with the Edo Tensei to fight at his side. And the 4-corner barrier was going to hold them all in until the 3rd Hokage was finished. It was a perfect plan. It was a 10-year plan. Naruto raised his right hand. He pointed at the rooftop of the stadium. He did not announce a technique. A column of crimson light ripped from his finger, climbed 300 meters in a fraction of a second, and hit the 4-corner barrier from the outside. The barrier was supposed to be impenetrable. It was impenetrable to any chakra-based attack. The Breath of Destruction was not a chakra-based attack. The Breath of Destruction was older than chakra. The Breath of Destruction had set fire to galaxies that had birthed and died before the human mind invented the concept of energy. The barrier popped. It did not break. It did not crack. It popped like a soap bubble. The 4 sound shinobi holding it screamed and were vaporized. Their bodies came apart in red mist. Orochimaru, on the rooftop, saw the column of light coming and threw himself sideways. The light grazed his right side and removed his arm again, this time at the shoulder, taking a great chunk of his ribs along with it. His scream was clearly audible in the stadium, even over the noise of the invasion. The 1st and 2nd Hokage, partway through their resurrected gestures, looked up. Naruto's beam clipped the 2nd Hokage entirely. The resurrected body of Tobirama Senju, master of water style, the founding architect of Konoha's Anbu, simply dispersed into ash. The 1st Hokage, Hashirama, was halfway through a wood release jutsu when the 2nd beam. Naruto did not need to gesture for this one. He simply looked at him, punched through his chest and ended him too. The two coffins sealed. The resurrected dead were gone. Hiruzen Sarutobi, at the center of the rooftop, lowered his arms slowly. He had been preparing the Reaper death seal. He had been ready to give his life. He looked down at the arena, where his student stood with his hands still raised, and he made a small sound that was half a laugh and half a sob. Orochimaru, missing an arm, missing a quarter of his torso, regenerating in real time and very poorly, stumbled to his feet. Naruto's voice carried up to the rooftop without effort. "Run, Snake!" Orochimaru ran. He fled the rooftop. He fled the stadium. He fled the village. He fled out the east gate during the height of the invasion, where the chaos he himself had ordered now masked his own retreat. He would be seen 2 hours later, 3 countries away, half naked and missing limbs, and crawling through a wheat field with the eyes of a man who had been forcibly retired from his ambition. Back in the arena, the invasion was reaching its peak. A roar split the sky. In the village 100 meters above the rooftops, the air shimmered. A massive form began to materialize. It was tan. It was scaled. It was shaped like a raccoon and a dog and a god put through a blender. It was Shukaku, the One-Tail, summoned not by Gaara. Gaara was sitting peacefully in the stands, refusing to participate, but by the Sand Jonin who had been embedded in the invasion as a contingency plan, using a stolen scroll to force the manifestation of the Biju directly, without the seal's release. Shukaku, freed from Gaara's body, was fully unhinged. The One-Tail rose to its full 100-meter height. Its tail swung once and took out a city block. Its laugh was the sound of a child's nightmare given voice. It had been imprisoned for years. It was awake. It was angry. It was hungry. It saw the village below it. It saw the people running. It opened its mouth. A shout cut across the village. "You are loud." Shukaku's head turned. Naruto rose from the arena floor. Crimson energy detonated under his feet. The stone exploded in a ring around him. He went up like a missile, climbing fast through the air, faster, faster, breaking the sound barrier somewhere around the rooftops, carrying a contrail of red light behind him. His shirt began to disintegrate from the heat. His back tore open. 2 great wings burst out, scaled, leathery, the color of dried blood. Each wing was the size of a small ship. The wings beat once and the air below him exploded outward, knocking roof tiles off houses for blocks. From his head, 2 horns extended, black, jagged, swept back. His teeth lengthened, his pupils slit. His skin in patches across his chest and arms was now scaled. Partial manifestation. He hit Shukaku at the collarbone of the One-Tail. The impact was geological. Windows broke for half the village. The shockwave cracked stone foundations across the merchant district. Shukaku, all 100 meters of it, was driven backward and sideways out of the village, crashing through the south wall, plowing a trench through the trees beyond. Naruto landed on Shukaku's chest, pinning the Biju to the earth like a cat pinning a moth. The One-Tail screamed and thrashed. Sand rose around it in geysers. The forest under it began to be sucked into the body, the desert demon trying to draw a mass. Naruto leaned down. He put his face near Shukaku's. His voice came out doubled. His own voice and the voice of the King of Dragons in unison, the second voice older than mountains. "Dragon fear!" The roar hit Shukaku at point-blank range. For Shukaku, a tailed beast, an entity made of living chakra older than human civilization, a creature that had spent millennia being the thing other things were afraid of, the experience was new. Shukaku whimpered. The One-Tail's body began to shrink. Sand fell out of it. The chakra holding the form together started to come undone. Shukaku tried to retreat, tried to dive into a body, found no body to retreat into, panicked and collapsed. The 100-meter form crumbled into a heap of normal sand. The chakra signature dispersed back across the desert. The One-Tail was, for the foreseeable future, going to need a long lie down. Naruto stood up off the pile of sand. His wings folded back. The horns retracted into his hair. The scales receded. He looked back at the village. The invasion was already collapsing. The Sand Nin saw their own Biju humiliated and lost their nerve. The Sound Nin, leaderless after Orochimaru's flight, broke and ran. Konoha Jonin and Chunin, who had been pinned down across the village, began to sweep up the stragglers. The siege ended in less than an hour. Casualties on the village side were the lowest of any major invasion in shinobi history. In the stands of the arena, Jiraiya stood on the railing of a press box. He had come up there to support the Hokage. He had stayed because he could not look away. He had watched Naruto rise. He had watched Naruto manifest. He had watched a 13-year-old fight a tailed beast and win in 3 exchanges. He laughed. It was the laugh of a man who has just been told the prophecy he had spent his life chasing was real and was a little bit larger than he had imagined and was named Naruto Uzumaki. He's going to break the world, Jiraiya said to no one in particular. He's going to break the world and put it back together better. Up on the rooftop of the stadium, the Hokage sat down on the tiles and laughed too. He laughed for a long time. It hurt his old chest. He laughed anyway. He had been ready to die today. Instead, he was going to live. He was going to see the next generation. He was going to see the boy walk where he could only crawl. He was, that day, the happiest he had ever been as Hokage. In the weeks that followed, intelligence reports flooded into every major hidden village. Iwa flagged its initial report as unverifiable, suspected exaggeration. Kumo flagged its report as potentially fabricated, investigate source. Kiri flagged its report as if true, recall all foreign deployments. Suna issued an internal apology for ever attempting an invasion in the first place and promised, in an unusual diplomatic cable, to forever afterward consider the Hidden Leaf an ally, partly out of guilt, partly because Gaara had returned home and ascended to the council with such silent conviction that no one quite knew what to do with him. Every village had spies in Konoha. Every spy filed reports. Every report described in slightly different phrasing the same impossible boy. Iwa's intelligence head, an old man with a long white beard, finally tossed the latest report on his desk and said, "Either the entire world has gone mad, or we have a problem we cannot solve. Both are bad." Kumo's intelligence head, a tall man with a scar across his nose, said something similar. Then he picked up his phone and called the Raikage and recommended, in firm terms, that the village's previous standing order to attempt to capture a Konoha Jinchuriki be amended immediately to a standing order to never under any circumstances approach a Konoha Jinchuriki for any reason. The Akatsuki met in their cave. The hologram projections of the 10 members flickered around the meeting. Pain, 6 bodies, 1 will, stood at the center. The 9 tails container, Pain said. Reports from the invasion. Itachi Uchiha, in red and black cloak, said nothing. Kisame Hoshigaki, beside him, grinned. This is a fun report. Sasori, in his puppet body, said, verifiable? Multiple sources, Pain said, cross-referenced. The boy unsealed Shukaku and resealed it without a seal. The boy obliterated a 4-corner barrier. The boy maimed Orochimaru. The hologram of Toby, the orange spiral mask in this stage of the meeting still playing the fool, said, Toby thinks Orochimaru is bad. Toby is happy. Pain, who was reading the room, looked at Itachi. You and Kasame, he said. You are the team I was going to send. Itachi's eyes did not move. The Sharingan was already in its mature form. He had seen many things in his life. He had killed many people. He had also been chosen originally for this mission because he had a soft spot for his little brother, who was on Naruto's team, and Pain had thought sending Itachi might allow for a softer handling of the boy. I will go, Itachi said. Alone? With Kasame? Yes. Plan? Itachi was quiet for a long moment. Observation, he said. We will not engage, bruh. We will see if the reports are true. Pain nodded. If they are true, we retreat, we reevaluate. We do not lose Akatsuki to one boy. The meeting ended. Itachi, in his physical body in a cave on the border of fire and hot springs, opened his eyes. Kasame, sitting across from him, was sharpening Samehada. You think this is bad, Itachi? I think, Itachi said, we have a problem that none of our existing plans were built for. Heh, Kasame said. He bared his teeth. Sounds like fun. Itachi did not answer. 500 miles to the south, Naruto Uzumaki was walking back into Konoha after a brief mission to the border with Jiraiya. He stopped at the gate. He looked at the sky. He sniffed the air. 2 of them are coming, he said. Jiraiya looked at him. 2 of who? The Akatsuki, Itachi Uchiha, and the shark. How can you? They're being careful, but not careful enough. They'll be in the village within the week. Jiraiya, who had spent 20 years tracking the Akatsuki, who had sources in 3 countries that never produced this kind of advance warning, looked at the boy he was supposed to be teaching and decided then and there that he was going to spend the rest of his life trying to be the kind of mentor a boy like this deserved, even if that meant simply standing next to him and clapping when appropriate. Right, Jiraiya said. Let's tell the Hokage. After ramen, Naruto said. After ramen. The week passed. Itachi and Kasame moved through the countryside, careful, observing, keeping their chakra suppressed below sensor ranges. They reached the village outskirts on a Friday evening. They moved into the village under the cover of dusk. They entered a small dango shop in the merchant district to take stock. Kakashi found them within an hour. Asuma and Kurenai joined him within 90 seconds of his arrival. Itachi and Kasame stood up. Kasame swung Samehada. Asuma drew his trench knives. Kakashi prepared a chidori. Kurenai prepared a genjutsu. The dango shop's owner, a small woman with a wooden ladle, climbed out the back window and began running. The fight had not yet started when the front of the dango shop was very abruptly removed. Naruto was standing in the wreckage where the door had been. He had not knocked. Out, he said, looking at the three jonin. His voice was friendly, but it carried. Kakashi, Asuma, and Kurenai got out. They walked briskly into the street. They stood at a distance and watched. Naruto stepped into the dango shop. Itachi looked at him. Itachi, in that moment, was experiencing what Sasuke had experienced on the day Naruto announced dragon fear in the land of waves. It was not a feeling Itachi was familiar with. Itachi had been in the Anbu since he was 11. Itachi had killed his entire clan in one night. Itachi was, in nearly every way, a man who had stopped being afraid of things by the time he was 12. The current feeling was not one he had experienced in years. His Sharingan activated. The Manjikyo manifested. Three-pointed shuriken in each iris. Tsukuyomi, Itachi said. Naruto looked at him. The Tsukuyomi did not activate. It tried. It got partway through. The technique reached out for Naruto's mind and found where the mind should have been, a wall the size of a continent. The wall was red. The wall had eyes. The eyes were open. The eyes were looking back. Itachi had launched the most powerful genjutsu in the Sharingan's catalog, and his own technique had bounced off and come back. The Tsukuyomi engulfed Itachi. Itachi found himself in his own genjutsu world. The sky was red. The moon was red. The world was red. He was tied to a cross. His own body, his own technique. A figure stood in front of him. The figure was the size of a mountain. The figure's eyes were yellow. The figure's teeth were the size of buildings. The figure looked at Itachi and the figure spoke. Little Uchiha, did you really try that on me? Itachi tried to dispel the genjutsu. He could not. He had never been on the receiving end of his own Tsukuyomi before. It was thorough. You will leave my host in peace, the figure said. You will tell your masked friend with the orange swirl that I know what he is. I know who he is, and I am waiting for him. You will continue your charade, Uchiha, because your charade serves the village, and I respect the boy who chose his village over his clan. We will meet again. When we do, I will give you the death you have wanted for years, but not today. Itachi, in the genjutsu, said nothing. The figure tilted its head. Speak. I understand, Itachi said. Good. The genjutsu broke. Itachi was back in the dango shop. He had been in the genjutsu for 1 second of real time. He had been in the genjutsu for 72 hours of subjective time. He blinked. He bowed his head a fraction. He turned and walked out of the dango shop. Kasame, watching, said, Itachi, what the hell? We're leaving. What do you mean leaving? Walk. Kasame, who had been cocky, who had been ready, looked at Naruto in the doorway of the shop. Naruto was looking at him. Naruto had not used a single technique against Kasame. He had not needed to. He had been watching Kasame the whole time, the way a man watches an interesting bug crawl across his table. A flicker of curiosity, no real attention. Kasame felt Samehada tremble in his hand. The sword was alive. The sword ate chakra. The sword had never, in Kasame's life, been afraid of anything. The sword was afraid right now. Kasame followed Itachi out of the shop. They walked away from the village. They did not look back. They reported to Pain that the reports were real, that the boy was beyond the reach of current Akatsuki capability, that the masked man, Toby, had been mentioned by name by an entity inside the boy who knew things he should not have been able to know. Pain, after the report, did something he had not done in years. He convened the full Akatsuki. He suspended the Biju collection plans. He told them to lay low, he thought. We will need to wait. We will need to grow stronger. We will need a plan that does not exist yet. He was right. Sasuke watched all of this from a distance. He had been told by Itachi years ago to grow strong, to gain the Mangekyo Sharingan, to come for him in vengeance. The path had been laid out. The path had been the one thing in Sasuke's life he could trust. The path required power. Power, in Sasuke's framework, had two sources. One was the Uchiha bloodline. The other was outside teachers. Naruto had visited him in the hospital after the invasion. Sakura had been there. Sakura had been hovering. Naruto had walked in, looked at Sasuke's chart, sat down in the chair beside the bed and told him, in plain words, that Itachi had not killed the clan because he was evil, that the clan had been planning a coup, that Itachi had been ordered by the village leadership to end it, that Sasuke had been raised on a lie by both his brother and his village, and that the lie had cost him his childhood. Sasuke had not believed it. Sasuke had screamed at Naruto. Sasuke had thrown a glass of water. Sasuke had told Naruto to get out, to mind his own business, to never speak about this again. Naruto had stood up. He had picked up the water glass off the floor. He had set it back on the table. Believe what you need to believe, Naruto had said. But don't follow the snake. The snake will use you and discard you. You're worth more than that. Sasuke had screamed at him again. Naruto had left. Sasuke, in the days that followed, had been visited by 4 of Orochimaru's Sound Four. They had snuck in. They had offered him power. They had told him Orochimaru would teach him. They had told him Konoha was holding him back. They had told him the truth, partial truth, about the Manjikyo and the curse mark and the strength he could gain. Sasuke, who had heard from Naruto a story he had refused to accept, who was now watching Naruto eclipse him in every dimension of the shinobi life, who had grown up believing he was meant for greatness and was now, every day, made smaller by being near the boy he had once dismissed, listened to the Sound Four with a hunger he was barely concealing. He decided, one night in early autumn, that he was going to leave. He packed a bag. He left a note for Sakura, because despite everything she did love him, and he was not entirely incapable of recognizing kindness. He walked out the village gate at 3 in the morning. He met the Sound Four in the woods. They began to move toward the border. Naruto woke at 3:15 in the morning. He sat up in his bed. He looked at the wall. He sighed. He got up. He put on his coat. He stepped out his window. He went to the rooftop of his building. He looked east in the direction of the border. "Idiot," he said. He stepped off the rooftop. He landed in the street. He started walking toward the gate. Jiraiya, who had been on a rooftop 2 blocks away because he was a paranoid old man who liked to sleep with a rotating watch on his student, dropped down beside him. "Where are you going?" "To get Sasuke. Sakura's going to find out. We should bring a team." "No team. I'll handle it." Jiraiya looked at him. "You'll handle Orochimaru's Elite Four." "Yes, right, of course." Naruto walked out the gate. He did not run. He did not need to. He walked at a pace that was, somehow, faster than anyone he had ever traveled with had ever moved. The road blurred under his feet. The trees passed in green smears on either side. He covered in 3 hours what would have taken a normal Jonin 2 days. He caught up to Sasuke and the Sound Four at the Valley of the End. The Valley of the End was the place where Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha had fought their final battle. 2 stone statues stood facing each other across a great chasm. A waterfall fell between them. The river below wound through the canyon for miles. It was a place soaked in history, in stories, in the kind of legends that shinobi told their grandchildren. It was, that morning, going to become known for something else. The Sound Four were gone. Naruto had passed them on the road in the dark. He had not slowed down. He had walked through the 4 of them the way a man walks through a curtain. Tayuya had been the last to fall, and she had taken the longest, because she had a smart mouth, and Naruto had appreciated it on a small level. He had touched her on the forehead. She had collapsed unconscious. He had left her in a bush. She would survive. The other 3 would also survive. They would all wake up 6 hours later, 300 meters from where they had fallen, in a strange new village called the Hidden Leaf, where they would be processed as defectors and offered amnesty in exchange for information. All 4 of them would take it. Sasuke had gone ahead, alone, riding a small wave of false confidence that had not survived the news that all 4 of his escorts had vanished without a trace. He had reached the Valley of the End at dawn. He had stopped at the foot of the Madara statue. He had felt Naruto coming. He had activated his Sharingan, the awakened pair, 2 tomoe per eye, plus 1 new tomoe in his left from the prelims, which was 3 tomoe and the start of the mature form. He had bitten his thumb. He had begun to mold the curse mark. The black flames spread across his skin, the gray patches creeping up his neck and across his cheek, his hair lengthening, his eyes lighting up. The curse mark hit level 2. His skin went gray. Wings, pale, fleshy, 4-pronged, burst from his back. A starburst pattern spread across his nose. He raised his hand and started gathering chakra. It was not blue chakra. It was black. Black Chidori. Lightning so dense it absorbed light around it. The signature of an Avenger. Naruto came down out of the sky. He landed on the head of the Hashirama statue. He did not have wings yet. He did not need them. He had walked off a cliff 3 miles back and continued walking on the air, the way a man might continue walking on a road. His feet carried him through the sky to the top of the statue, and he stood there now, hands in his pockets, looking down at Sasuke. "You think a snake," Naruto said, "can give you power, Sasuke?" Sasuke looked up. He had practiced this moment in his head 1,000 times. He had practiced what he would say. He had practiced how he would stand. He had practiced the phrasing of his refusal, the cold words, the closing speech. All of it left him. He stared up at the boy on the statue, and he saw, really saw for the first time, with the Sharingan working at full capacity, the silhouette of the dragon behind Naruto, the mountain-sized red dragon, the thing that had been there since the Forest of Death, since the bridge, since the bell test, since the first day at the academy. It had always been there. It would always be there. Sasuke started screaming. It was an inarticulate scream. It was the scream of a man who has just understood in a single moment that the thing he had been chasing was both more impossible and more pointless than he had ever realized. He launched himself off the ground. His curse mark wings beat once. He came up at supersonic speed. The black Chidori screamed in his right hand. Naruto's eyes, watching him approach, were absolutely, totally without irritation. There was not even contempt. There was only faintly, somewhere far back behind the crimson, a small flicker of something like sadness. "You seek power, Uchiha. Let me show you what true power looks like." His hands ignited, crimson. The fire wrapped each fist. His whole body was haloed in red. Sasuke's black Chidori came in like a thunderbolt. It hit Naruto's left palm. The lightning died. The black Chidori, the technique that could pierce anything, that had been Sasuke's strongest weapon, that Kakashi had warned him to use only against opponents who deserved it, fizzled out in Naruto's palm like a candle in a hurricane. The black light went out. The screaming sound went silent. Naruto's hand closed around Sasuke's wrist. He looked at Sasuke. Then he reached up with his other hand and grabbed Sasuke by the throat. He pulled. He turned in the air. He brought Sasuke down. He came down with him. They hit the cliff face of the Madara statue at terminal velocity and went through it, through stone, straight through. The face of the Madara statue, the face that had stood in the Valley of the End for the better part of a century, cratered around them as they passed. Sasuke's body broke through stone like a fist through wet paper. He felt his ribs go. He felt his shoulder go. He could not breathe. The curse mark on his skin was burning and writhing, screaming for more chakra, finding nothing nearby except a heat that was eating it alive in patches. They came out the other side of the statue head, in the dust and rubble of the new tunnel. Naruto pinned Sasuke against the rock face of the cliff exposed by their passage. He leaned in. His face was inches from Sasuke's. His eyes were burning. This is the power of destruction. He turned his head. He looked past Sasuke's ear, out across the valley, at the great length of canyon stretching west, the half of the valley that contained the river, the cliffs, the trees, the old battlefield. He opened his mouth. The crimson light gathered. Breath of destruction. The beam left him. It was not a small beam. The beam in the land of waves had been wrist thick. The beam in the Dango shop barrier had been hand wide. This beam was the size of a building. It was the color of a sunset on a planet where the sun had given up. It traveled across the western half of the valley in less than a second. The Hashirama statue ceased to exist. The cliff under it ceased to exist. The river stopped because the riverbed in front of the beam ceased to exist. And the water that had been heading west now had nowhere to go and began to mound up in confusion and steam off in vast clouds. The beam carried for 2 miles. It carved a canyon out of the existing canyon. It left behind itself a trench of glassed earth a kilometer wide, hundreds of meters deep. The shock wave knocked every bird within 10 miles out of the air. It registered on geological monitoring equipment in 3 nations. The Kazakage of the sand, who had been sitting in his office having tea, set down his cup and walked to the window without saying a word. When the beam ended, the valley was a different shape. The Madara statue was still there, half broken, leaning. The Hashirama statue was gone. Where the stone giant had stood, there was now only a smoking trench full of glass and steam. The curse mark on Sasuke's body recoiled. It was a living thing. It had a will of sorts. The will, faced with the heat of Naruto's aura at point-blank range, was withdrawing. Patches of the gray skin were burning off. The wings on Sasuke's back were curling like leaves in a fire. The starburst on his face was retreating, fading, peeling back in a small black cloud that drifted away and dissolved in the air. Sasuke's eyes, which had been gold yellow with the curse mark, returned to red Sharingan. Then they closed. His body went slack. He had passed out from a combination of pain, exhaustion, and the fundamental experience of being human in close proximity to something that should not have been on this planet. Naruto held him up against the cliff for one more moment. He looked at Sasuke's face. His expression was, for an instant, something that was almost tender. "Idiot," he said softly. He pulled Sasuke off the cliff. He shouldered him. He turned around. He stepped out of the tunnel he had carved through the Madara statue, walked across the rim of the smoking new canyon, and started home. He did not give a speech. He did not look back. Kings do not explain themselves. Behind him, the Valley of the End, that ancient place, that legendary place, that final battlefield of 2 of the strongest shinobi who had ever lived, was renamed by the locals within the week. They called it the Valley of 2 Kings. The first king had carved it. The second king had finished it. The walk home took 2 days. He took his time. He stopped at a small village. He bought ramen. The cook, when he saw the boy carrying an unconscious teenager on his shoulder, did not ask any questions. He gave them both extra portions. When Naruto walked back through the gate of Konoha, the gate guards stood up so fast they knocked over their tea. One of them ran for the Hokage's tower. The other stood in place and waved Naruto through with both hands, as if directing a particularly important parade. Sasuke woke up in the hospital on the 3rd day. Sakura was there. She had been crying. She had also been told by Kakashi, in a careful voice, what had happened at the valley. The valley itself was now a reference point. The valley was being studied by geological teams. The valley was, in 3 months, going to become an officially recognized national landmark called the Valley of 2 Kings. Sakura had heard all of this. She was processing it the way she processed a lot of things now, with a small numbness, a nod, a continuation of the next task. When Sasuke opened his eyes, she did not yell at him. She did not slap him. She did not even cry harder. She said, "Welcome back." Sasuke looked at her. He looked at the ceiling. He looked at his hands. He said, "I'm sorry." Sakura, who had not expected that, sat down on the chair beside the bed and held his hand. In the doorway, Naruto stood with his hands in his pockets and watched. He did not enter. After a moment, he turned and walked away. Outside the hospital, Jiraiya was waiting. "Walk with me, kid." They walked. They walked all the way out of the village, up to a small hill that overlooked Konoha. The hill had a single tree. The tree had a small bench. They sat down on the bench. The sun was setting. Akatsuki backed off. Jiraiya said, "I know. Orochimaru is somewhere in the land of Earth, hiding. He's a shadow of himself. Tsunade is going to be the next Hokage. Sensei is stepping down. He says he's tired. He says he wants to teach again." "Good. You scare him, you know." "I know. He still loves you." "I know." Jiraiya laughed. He scratched his beard. "You're 13, kid." "Yes. The world has no idea what to do with you." "It will figure it out. Where do you go from here?" Naruto looked out at the village. The The sun was a red coin sinking into the trees in the west. The roofs of Konoha were turning gold. Smoke from 1,000 chimneys rose in soft columns. Children were running in the streets, calling each other in for dinner. Lanterns were beginning to come on along the main road. It was beautiful. It was, he had decided, his. Not in the way an emperor owns a country, in the way a dragon owns its mountain. The thing was his to look at, his to know, his to defend. I have a list, Naruto said. A list. Of names. Akatsuki. Yes. All of them. All of them. Jiraiya took out his pipe. He lit it. He puffed on it for a moment. Kid, I just want you to know, whatever you need from me, wherever I can help, I'll be there. Naruto looked at him. I know, Naruto said. It was the smallest word. It carried a lot. They sat there until the sun was completely down. Then Jiraiya stood up, clapped Naruto on the shoulder. The shoulder was warm, but Jiraiya did not flinch this time. He was used to it, and walked back down toward the village. Naruto did not follow. He climbed up the tree on the hill. He went up to the highest branch. He stood on the branch with his hands in his pockets and looked out over the village, over the wall, over the trees beyond. The horizon was a long, dark line. Somewhere beyond it, in caves and bunkers and hidden monasteries, the worst people in the world were huddling around lanterns and drawing maps and planning a war they thought was going to look one way and was going to look very, very different. Somewhere beyond that line was a man with a swirling orange mask who thought he was the spider at the center of every web. Somewhere beyond that line was a man with 6 bodies who thought he was God. Somewhere beyond that line was a snake, missing limbs, hiding in a cave, plotting a comeback that was never going to come. Somewhere beyond that line was an old man with a blank face who thought he could revive a long-dead king and use him to remake the world. Naruto Uzumaki, age 13, on the highest branch of a tree on a hill above the Hidden Leaf Village, smiled. It was a small smile. It had teeth. The wind picked up. It carried the smell of pine and wood smoke and distant rain. The first stars came out above the horizon. The 9 tails, deep inside Naruto's mindscape, was curled up in its cage with its tails wrapped around its body, sleeping a sleep that was deeper than anything it had known in 1,000 years. Behind it, coiled around the cage like a great red guardian, the soul of Antares, the king of berserk dragons, the monarch of destruction, the oldest and most feared of the 9 monarchs, slept too, content in his new throne. The boy on the branch did not need to speak. He was the monarch of destruction. He was the king of dragons. He was the scariest thing breathing in 3 nations, and almost everyone who had met him in the last 6 months had filed reports that began with a polite version of "The world is broken. Please advise." He looked at the horizon. He looked at the world that did not yet know what was coming for it. He stretched. He cracked his neck. Crimson scales rippled across his shoulders, a slow ripple, like the surface of a lake disturbed by something underneath. They settled back into skin. His eyes burned for 1 second and then went back to blue. He stepped off the branch. He landed in the street below, as light as a falling leaf. He walked back into the village. He walked past the gate guards, who saluted him on instinct. He walked down the main road where lanterns were lit, where shopkeepers were closing up for the night, where a small dog ran out of an alley and offered him its paw, and he bent down and shook the paw, and the dog's owner, watching from her doorway, smiled and waved. He waved back. He walked all the way to Ichiraku. Tochi looked up when the curtain parted. "Naruto-kun," Tochi said. "The usual?" "2 of the usual." "2? Sakura's coming. Oh, and Sasuke, when he gets out of the hospital, probably in a few days." "3 of the usual?" "4. Kakashi-sensei always shows up when it's free." Tochi laughed. He started cooking. Naruto sat down at the counter. He looked at the row of bowls hanging on the wall. He looked at Ayame, who was wiping down a plate and humming, and who looked back at him with an expression that contained, for the first time in years, no fear at all, just affection. Outside, the village settled into the long, slow dark of a peaceful night. Inside, the boy who had been a star ate his ramen with a small, almost ordinary contentment. The bowl steamed. The broth was perfect. The noodles were al dente. He set down his chopsticks for 1 moment to listen to the sound of laughter coming from a house across the street. He smiled. It was a real smile. It had no teeth this time. The future was coming. It announced itself at 4 in the morning, 2 days later, when an Anbu appeared in Naruto's bedroom window with a scroll, found him already awake and lacing his boots, and reported back to Tsunade that the boy seemed to have known the message was on its way. He left through the gate with Jiraiya before sunrise. He was 13. He carried a small pack and a determined look. Tochi watched him go from the doorway of Ichiraku, holding a wrapped bundle of dry noodles he had pressed into the boy's hands at the last second, and he wiped his eyes on his apron after the figures vanished down the road. The 2 years that followed were a series of weather events. Naruto traveled with Jiraiya for the first 3 months. Then, Jiraiya needed a week to deal with a contact in the land of tea. Naruto continued ahead. Jiraiya caught up 4 days later in a fishing village where the locals had built a small shrine to the boy who had walked through their town and put out a wildfire by exhaling. He did this on his way to dinner. The shrine was already polished. The villagers were lighting candles when Jiraiya arrived, and one old woman handed him a candle and asked, in the tone of a person making conversation about the weather, whether he was the dragon's father. Jiraiya had said yes, mostly because the truth would have taken too long to explain. After that, the pattern set. Naruto moved. Jiraiya followed. Sometimes Naruto waited at an inn. Sometimes he sent a toad with a scrap of paper that read me by the 3rd bridge or the harbor in Sui, depending. Jiraiya kept up most of the time. The times he fell behind, he found that the boy had handled whatever needed handling and had ordered them both ramen at whatever local stall was best. Villages began keeping ledgers. They did this without coordinating. A clerk in the land of hot springs invented the format independently. A clerk in the land of iron copied it from a passing merchant, and within a year, there was a loose agreement among record keepers across 3 nations that any seismic disturbance, any sudden weather shift, any forest fire that ended itself, any river that changed course overnight should be filed under a single category. The category was simply called passage. The clerks knew what it meant. The travelers knew. Even the kids knew, eventually. The Akatsuki in their cave were 2 years behind on a schedule that was supposed to take 10. Kasame had been sent as part of a scouting team early in the gap. He came back with Samahata chittering on his shoulder. He sat in front of Itachi without speaking for 40 minutes. Then he said, "My sword has opinions now." Itachi waited. Kasame continued, "It says we should retire. I'm starting to agree with it." Itachi said nothing because Itachi rarely said anything, but he made tea, which was his way of acknowledging that Kasame had survived something worth acknowledging. Deidara went on a scout mission with Sasori 6 months in. He came back without his usual chatter. For 3 weeks, he sat in the corner of the cave and made small clay birds and let them go, one by one, into the air. Sasori, for his part, said nothing about the trip. He went to his workshop. He built 3 new puppets, large ones, with red scales painted across their plating and yellow glass eyes that glowed by mechanism. He stood and looked at them for an hour. Then he took them apart, scale by scale, and burned the wood. He built nothing else for a month after that. When Pain asked for a report, Sasori said only, "We adjust the schedule," and would say no more. Haiden asked who the guy was. Hidan was told. Hidan laughed and said something about Jashin protecting him from any boy who thought he was a dragon. Kakuzu, beside him, opened a ledger and looked at the bounty board and said the number for Naruto Uzumaki was now blank. Hidan asked why. Kakuzu said, "Because no one is willing to write a number on him anymore." Hidan stopped laughing. Kakuzu kept reading. In Konoha, the village did its work. Sasuke trained. He did this every morning at the river alone, then every afternoon at the training ground with Kakashi, then every evening with whatever scroll Tsunade had pulled for him from the archives. He had broken his ribs in the valley. They had healed. He had broken his pride. That was healing more slowly. The healing showed in small ways. The way he held a door for Sakura, the way he bowed to Iruka in the street, the way he told a younger Jinin, in a voice he had not used before, that it was good he was practicing. He still did not smile much, but the ice around him had warmed by a few degrees. Sakura trained with Tsunade. She got better. She got much better. She broke a boulder one summer afternoon with a single fist and looked at her own hand for a long minute, half terrified and half delighted. Tsunade behind her drank a small bottle of sake and said, "There you go, about time." The village got stronger because the village had decided to stand up taller. There was an awareness, baked into the air, that the village had a guardian who operated somewhere between a natural feature and a civic office. People walked in the streets a little less afraid of the world, a little more afraid of letting their guardian down. Crime fell. Fights at the bar fell. The festival attendance went up. A child painted a red dragon on the side of an apartment building and no one made him take it down. The dragon stayed. Letters came, short ones. The first arrived for Iruka. It was 3 lines. It said, "Your students miss you when you are sick. Take better care of yourself, Sensei. The teacher I had matters to me." And Iruka read it twice. He framed it. He hung it behind his desk. He cried for about an hour, then washed his face and went to teach his class. He came back the next day and looked at the frame and cried for 10 more minutes on principle, then carried on. The second letter arrived 8 months later. It said, "Sensei, the land of frost has a fish stew you would like. I am going west tomorrow. I think of you when I sit by water." Iruka framed that one too. A letter went to Tochi and Ayame. It said only, "Keep a bowl warm. I am coming back next Thursday." It was postmarked from a country that was 3 weeks of travel away. Tochi ignored the impossibility of the timing. He kept a bowl warm anyway. Ayame stood by the door from 2 o'clock in the afternoon onward. The curtain parted at 6. Naruto walked in. The bowl was hot. He ate it without saying a word. He paid the bill. Ayame took the coins and turned around and held the counter for a moment because her hands were shaking. Tochi, who saw her, pretended he did not see. The third place a letter went was to Jiraiya, when Jiraiya had been 4 days behind and starting to despair. The letter found him in an inn in the land of waves. It read, in the loose handwriting Jiraiya knew now better than his own, "Old man. The hot spring at the 3rd district is open until midnight. I bought you a ticket. I will be there by sundown. Try the lavender bath." And Jiraiya cried into a beer. Then he went to the hot spring. The lavender bath was wonderful. Naruto arrived at sundown. Konan met him in the rain country. She was on a rooftop across a road in a market street, watching from under a small awning, her cloak the color of stormwater. She had been sent by Pain to observe. She had been told to make no contact. She watched for 4 hours. She tracked his movement through the market the way she had tracked targets her whole adult life, which was to say with absolute attention. He bought a peach. He paid the vendor more than the asking price. He sat on a low wall and ate the peach. He looked at the sky. He looked at the people. He did not look at her. In the 4th hour, with the sun setting behind her and the street going gold, he walked into the middle of the market crowd, stopped, turned his face up to the rooftop where she was hidden, and said, in a voice that crossed the noise of 200 people without effort, "You have been watching me for 4 hours. Come down or do not, but decide." She came down. They sat in a tea house. The owner brought tea without asking. The tea was good. The tea house was empty, although it was the busy hour, and Konan would later realize that the owner had simply turned other customers away at the door without a word, because some part of him had understood without being told. "I know your name," he said when the tea was poured. "Konan." "You serve Nagato." "Yes." "You are sent." "Yes." "To observe." "Yes." He sipped his tea. "What did you see?" She thought about it. The honest answer was that she had seen a boy buy a peach and pay too much and sit on a wall and look at the sky, and the sum of all those small things was somehow larger than the violence she had heard described in the reports. "I saw a person," she said finally. He looked at her. "That is more than most see." They talked for 2 hours. They talked about the rain. They talked about the country. She told him about the orphans she had grown up with in Yahiko and the building they had once lived in and that had burned down. He asked her about origami. She showed him how to fold a paper crane. His large hands were careful with the paper. The crane came out crooked, but it came out. She walked back to Payne's tower in a daze. She wrote a report that contained one line, "I do not believe conventional engagement is advisable." She sent it. Payne read it. He filed it without comment. She saw Naruto 3 more times during the gap. Each meeting was shorter than the last. The last meeting was 11 minutes in a noodle shop in a border town, and he had paid for both of their bowls, and he had left without saying goodbye. And she had stood on the sidewalk afterward for half an hour, holding a paper napkin he had folded into a flower and slid across the table without comment before he stood up. She had taken the flower home and put it on the windowsill of her room above the rebuilt orphanage. The flower was still there when the gap ended. He came home in the spring of his 16th year. He came up the road from the south. He was taller. His hair was longer, falling past his ears, and the streaks of red in it had widened. Half his head now ran red, the rest a dirty blonde going wheat in the sun. He wore a crimson jacket that came to his thighs, dark trousers, plain boots. His hands were in his pockets. His eyes were blue. The crimson, when you looked, was settled in around the iris like banked coals, there if you needed it, sleeping if you did not. The gate guard on duty saw him. He stood up. He set down his cup of tea. He opened his mouth, ready to ask for identification, ready to call for a senior officer, ready to do the dozen things the protocol said to do. Out of pure reflex, he said, "Welcome back, Naruto-kun." Naruto stopped at the gate. He looked at the guard. He smiled. It was a real smile. It reached his eyes. It made the crow's feet appear that ordinarily lived hidden under the level of his expression. And for 1 second, he looked like every kid who had ever come home from a long trip and seen the place they loved at the end of the road. The guard would talk about that smile for years. He would talk about it at his retirement party. He would talk about it the morning he became a grandfather. He would describe it often as the day he understood what the village had instead of an army. The point of the description was always the same. The smile had been ordinary. That was the part that made it remarkable. The Dragon Monarch had walked through the gate and grinned at him like a teenager, and the world had felt, for 1 second, like the world was going to be all right. Naruto walked into the village. He walked down the main street. People stopped. They stared. They waved. He waved back. A boy with a wooden sword chased him for half a block, asked for an autograph, was told that autographs were for sword masters, not for kings, and went away ecstatic because he had been called a sword master. A small dog ran out and offered its paw. He shook the paw. The owner cried. This was apparently going to be a recurring theme of his life. He went to the Hokage Tower. He climbed the stairs. He knocked once. He opened the door. Tsunade was at her desk with a stack of paperwork the size of a small child. She looked up. She looked at him for a long second. She said, "Brat?" He said, "Hokage-sama." She said, "Sit down." He sat. She poured 2 cups of sake. She slid one across the desk. He picked it up. He was 16. The drinking age was higher than that. Neither of them mentioned it. "Welcome home," she said. "Thank you." "You have been busy." "Yes." Reports came in from everywhere, some of them with photographs. One of them was a painting by a farmer. The painting is good. I had it framed. "I'm sorry about the seismic disturbances." She laughed. "It came out tired and warm." "Tell me about the list." "Hidan and Kakuzu are in the land of fire. They are coming for a bounty in Wave. They will be in our territory by Thursday. I leave tomorrow." She looked at him for a long moment. "Do you want backup?" "No." "Do you want me to send anyone anyway?" "No." She drained her cup. "Then go cross off your list, kid." He drained his cup. He stood up. He bowed at the doorway, which was new for him, which she noticed, which she did not mention, which made her chest hurt because the bow meant he had grown up while she was not looking. Naruto. He turned. "Come back." "I will." He left through the window. She watched him go. She poured another cup of sake. She drank it. Then she pulled the next stack of paperwork toward her, because the work of running a village does not stop just because the king of the village is going to commit 5 murders in 5 days. He left at dawn. Hidan and Kakuzu were in a field outside a small farming village in the southeast of the Land of Fire. They had finished the bounty. The body was on the ground. Hidan had drawn his circle. He had performed his ritual. He was halfway through a monologue at the corpse, which was his habit when the day's killing went well, and Kakuzu was a few paces away counting coins and pretending to listen. The earth cratered between them. Naruto landed in a 20-meter ring of disturbed dirt. The crimson aura coming off him had set the surrounding grass to a gentle smolder. He stood up out of the small crater. He brushed dust off his sleeves. He looked from one to the other. He took them in. He weighed them. "Two of you," he said. "Neither of you are worth my full attention, so I will end this fast." Hidan turned. He stared. His scythe was already in his hand because his scythe was always in his hand. The wide grin under his slick-back silver hair stretched. "You know who I am, brat? Yes. Then you know I cannot die. I know what you believe." Hidan laughed. He laughed for a long time. He talked about Jashin. He talked about the blessings of a god that asked only for blood. He talked about how many shinobi had stood across this field from him over the years, and how few of them had walked off it. He talked for 45 seconds straight, which was the longest stretch of speech Naruto had ever sat through without interrupting. Naruto stood there with his hands in his pockets, watching, the way a man watches a small animal do a small trick. "Are you done?" Naruto asked. Hidan grinned. "Jashin-sama will." Naruto crossed the distance between them in one step. He grabbed Hidan's head with one hand. The draconic scales bloomed up his forearm, crimson plating, crawling, locking into place around his palm and fingers. He did not squeeze. He simply lifted. Hidan came off the ground with him. The big body kicked once. The scythe swung in a desperate arc and clanged off Naruto's shoulder and bounced off and fell into the grass. Hidan looked down at Naruto. The grin was still there. The fear had begun, around the edges of the grin, to make the muscles of his face shake. Immortality is a myth for insects. Naruto stamped one foot. The earth opened beneath them, a clean shaft, vertical, 10 feet across, falling away down into the soil for as long as gravity wanted to cooperate. He held Hidan over the shaft. "You will live," Naruto said. "That is your curse and your reward. You will live for as long as your god lasts, which I suspect is longer than the world. I have no use for your screaming." He dropped Hidan into the shaft. Then he raised his hand and pointed it down, breath of destruction. The beam came out of his palm, narrow, focused, the width of a man's wrist. It poured down the shaft and continued down. The earth around the shaft turned to glass. The stone below it turned to glass. The bedrock fused. The beam ended after 3 seconds, and the shaft sealed over itself behind it. The heat of the beam welding the soil into a single column of fused silica that ran 100 meters into the planet. Hidan was at the bottom of that column. He would remain there, screaming, in a glass tomb without enough room to lift his arms, for as long as his god kept him alive. The screaming would have no audience. The audience was the point. Naruto had judged him a small enough thing that an eternity of being unheard was the appropriate sentence. He turned to Kakuzu. Kakuzu had already begun to move. Kakuzu was not Hidan. Kakuzu was 60 years of survival. Kakuzu had 5 hearts beating in his chest, and the patience of a man who had outlasted 3 generations of his peers, and the absolute understanding that what had just happened to Hidan was the sort of thing you did not talk yourself out of. He had unbuttoned his coat. The black threads were already moving. The 5 masks had detached from his back and risen in a halo around him. They opened their mouths. Earth mask, water mask, fire mask, wind mask, lightning mask. All 5 released at once. A boulder the size of a house, a torrent of compressed water, a column of fire as long as a road, a vortex of cutting wind, a spear of lightning that hit twice in a breath. It was the technique Kakuzu had built his late career around. It had ended S-rank shinobi in 3 exchanges. It had collapsed mountainsides. It was, on this morning in this field, the apex of one man's lifetime of work. Naruto stood in the middle of it. He used fire magic. He did not gesture. He did not call the technique. The atmospheric heat around him simply rose to meet the incoming attacks, and the fire release was absorbed, and the wind scattered against the heat differential, and the water turned to steam before it touched him, and the lightning grounded itself into his body, and went where lightning goes when it cannot find its way home. The earth release struck him in the chest. The boulders shattered around the shape of him. The fragments fell to either side. His hair moved in the wind from the disturbance. That was the only effect. Kakuzu, 60 years old, was already running. He was fast. He was faster than men half his age. He took off across the field at a sprint, and his black threads extended behind him, ready to puppet his body forward at the speed of catastrophe, and he was halfway to the tree line when the air 10 feet ahead of him tore open like a cut in cloth. spatial manipulation. Naruto stepped through the cut. He appeared in front of Kakuzu, hands still in his pockets, expression the same expression of a man considering a column of figures. Goodbye. He took one hand out of his pocket. He brought it down on Kakuzu's chest. He did this without flourish. The black threads that made up Kakuzu's body, the tendons that bound his 5 stolen hearts together, the masks that floated around him like satellites, the long muscular columns that worked in place of his original organs, caught fire at the point of contact. The fire ran through the threads at the speed the threads conducted it, which was the speed of nervous transmission, which was lightning fast. Kakuzu's body lit up from inside. The masks bloomed outward and combusted in midair. The 5 hearts each gave one final beat and ceased. The body stood for 1/2 second, perfectly still, like a man considering an idea. Then there was a scorch on the grass shaped like a man. Naruto looked at the scorch. He nodded once. He turned and walked back across the field. He passed the corpse Hidan had been monologuing at. He paused, knelt, pulled the man's headband from his neck, folded it carefully, and tucked it into his jacket pocket. The bounty was a Konoha shinobi. The headband was going home. The farmer who saw all of this from his hillside watched the boy walk out of the field at a normal pace. He waited until the boy was a small figure in the distance. Then he walked down to the field. He saw the scorch. He saw the glass cap of the column where Hidan had gone in. He felt the heat coming off the soil. He went home. He wrote down what he had seen in pencil on the back of an envelope, and he ended his note with the line. The boy then walked away at a normal pace. He appeared to be thinking about something else. The note traveled. The note ended up by paths the farmer would never know about on Payne's desk 3 days later. Payne read it twice. He set it down. Conan watched him from the doorway. Payne said nothing. He did not need to. The numbers on the board went down by 2. Sasori and Deidara were sent next. They were sent because the schedule was already broken, because Payne had decided that observation had failed and engagement had to be tried, because some part of him still believed that a sufficient combination of people could solve what one person could not. Payne was wrong. They found Naruto on the road in the land of wind. He was walking. He was eating an apple. The sun was high. The desert was honest with its heat. Dry, blunt, the kind of heat that demands you respect it. Naruto was respecting it by being unbothered. Sasori sent the scout puppet first. It was a small one, a ground skitter, painted in sand camouflage, the kind of thing Sasori built to hand. It buried itself in the dust beside the road and moved alongside Naruto for half a mile, sending location data back through the chakra string. Naruto kept walking. After 2 hours, in the middle of nowhere, with the road empty and the sun pushing down, he stopped and looked at a particular patch of sand 20 feet ahead of him and said, without raising his voice, "Sasori, Deidara, you are following me 3 miles back. You have been for 2 hours. Either come forward or go home." A long pause. The scout puppet detonated into a cloud of tracker particles. The pause continued. Then, in the distance, a small dot in the sky resolved into a clay bird, and the bird grew, and the bird landed in the road 30 feet from Naruto, and Deidara dismounted with the grin of a man who had been waiting for an excuse. Sasori rolled forward inside his iron shell, Hiruko, on its silent puppet legs, the scorpion tail already raised. True art is fleeting. Deidara's hands were already moving. The mouths in his palms were already chewing. Clay birds began to peel from his fingers in a flock. 20, 40, 60, the flock thickening, rising, taking the shape of a small dark cloud over the road that was about to become several thousand small explosions. Naruto watched the flock rise. The apple in his hand was almost down to the core. He took one more bite. He looked at the apple. He looked at the cloud. He sighed. He exhaled. It was a long, slow exhale of heat. The air above him bent. The air rose. The air carried the heat upward as a wave, the way summer air carries shimmer off pavement, but 100 times more so. The wave reached the cloud of clay birds. Every bird detonated at once. The sky above the road turned white. The shock wave flattened the sand for 50 meters in every direction. Deidara, at the center of his own flock, with no clay between him and his own arsenal, took the full force of the simultaneous detonation. He went down screaming. His remaining arm came off above the elbow. His mouth, the one in his chest, was wailing. His face was a map of burns. His clay bird overhead had been the last thing in the air, and it came down in pieces. Art, Naruto said, looking at the wreckage, is permanent. Yours is smoke. Sasori had already deployed, the scroll on Hiruko's back unrolled. 200 puppets came out, the famous Sasori special, the army he had built across 30 years, every puppet a former human, every blade tipped with a poison that had no antidote. They filled the space around Naruto. They moved in perfect formation, the way Sasori always moved them, which was the formation of a man who had eliminated waste from his own thinking. They did not crowd. They did not collide. Each one had a purpose. Each one had a strike. Naruto tilted his head. Partial manifestation. The wings came out. They tore out of his back through the jacket, which he had reinforced with seal work after the last few times. The wings extended. They were obsidian red, leathery, their span wide enough to throw the road into shadow. The horns rose from his head, black, jagged, swept back. The crimson scales climbed his arms to his shoulders. His pupils slit. The aura around him, the air-bending heat that had always been there in low thrum, jumped to a roar. He beat the wings once. The first rank of puppets scattered. They were thrown into the air the way leaves are thrown by a storm. The blades that had been an inch from his face a moment before were suddenly 50 meters distant. He walked. He walked into the puppets the way a man walks through a hanging beaded curtain. Every puppet that touched him stopped. The wood ignited at the contact point. The poisoned blades ran along the scales of his arms, and the metal melted at the tip and dripped onto the sand and hardened into small, useless sculptures. A puppet swung a flail at his head. The flail came apart in the air. A puppet stabbed him in the back with a poisoned spear. The spear bent. He reached Hiruko. He grabbed the iron shell with one hand. He squeezed. The iron screamed. Hiruko's armor, which had stopped explosions, which had stopped S-rank jutsu, which had been Sasori's pride, which had been the front-rank shell of the Akatsuki's hardest fighter for years, crumpled like a tin can under a careless boot. Naruto pulled the shell open. The metal peeled back like petals. Sasori was inside. He was small. He was ancient in face and young in body, frozen at 15, his red hair framing an expression that, for the first time in his constructed century, was afraid. "You made these things," Naruto said, looking at the broken puppet army around them, "so you could feel nothing." Sasori said nothing. "You have not felt nothing. You are afraid right now." Sasori said nothing. His hands were shaking. He had built his hands. The hands were his own design. He had not given them the capacity to shake. He looked at his shaking hands, and he understood that the shaking was a thing his soul was doing, because his soul was the one part of him he had not been able to replace, and his soul was afraid. "It is a poor way to spend a life," Naruto said. He brought his hand down. There was a flare of red light. Sasori's 100-year body went dark. The puppet strings that had been holding the army in their paws went limp at the same instant, and 200 wooden bodies clattered to the sand at once. Naruto folded his wings back. The horns retracted. The scales receded. He walked over to Deidara, who was conscious and furious and lying in the road missing an arm. Deidara looked up at him. His one eye was full of hate. The hate was not new. The hate had been the engine of him. The hate was what made his art mean what it meant. "Your art surprised me," Naruto said. "Marginally. Go to hell, you." "Most things do not." He touched Deidara's remaining hand with 2 fingers. Deidara went unconscious. He would wake up 4 days later in a Konoha cell, his clay tongues gagged, his face bandaged. He would spend 6 months refusing to cooperate, and then another 6 months cooperating reluctantly because he was bored and tired, and had begun to grudgingly miss having someone to argue with about whether his art was worth anything. He never made a bomb again. He took up sculpture, the kind that did not explode, and he was bad at it. And he was annoyed about being bad at it, and the annoyance was the most alive he had felt in years. Naruto walked on. He was, reportedly, thinking about something else. Jiraiya was waiting for him at the next inn. Jiraiya had a drink ready. Jiraiya looked at him the way a father looks at a son who has come home from his first big test, and Jiraiya said, "Did you eat?" And Naruto said, "Yes." And Jiraiya said, "Eat again," and pushed a bowl of soup across the table. Naruto ate again. Jiraiya watched him eat. After the bowl was empty, Jiraiya said, "I am proud of you, kid." And Naruto looked at him, and the corners of his mouth moved up by a fraction. And Jiraiya took it as the sun coming out. 2 down. 3 more. Kasame came next. He came of his own accord. He told Itachi he was going. Itachi, sitting in their cave in the border of fire and hot springs, looked at his partner of 7 years and said, "You know." "Yeah." "You want it?" "Yeah." "All right." Itachi did not try to stop him. Itachi understood Kasame in a way that even Pain did not, which was that Kasame was a man whose entire life had been organized around finding the place where his strength would meet a wall it could not break. And Kasame had heard about that wall, and Kasame had decided that he would rather break against it than die a soft death of cancer in a cave. Kasame went to find him. He found him on a beach. It was the southern coast of the Land of Lightning, the strip of black sand below the cliffs where the fishing villages laid out their nets. The sun was setting. The water was glass with a long, slow swell. Naruto was standing on the water, 50 meters offshore, hands in his pockets, watching the horizon the way a man watches the news. Kasame walked out onto the sand. Samahata was on his shoulder, twitching. Kasame had felt the sword's discomfort growing since they had left the cave. He had been telling the sword to relax. The sword had been ignoring him, which was a first. The closer they had come, the more the sword had vibrated with a feeling that Kasame, after some thought, identified as nerves. "My friend," Kasame had told the sword, "today is a day where we get to see what we are." The sword had stopped vibrating after that. The sword had settled. The sword had decided, in its way, to commit. "Naruto Uzumaki," Kasame called across the water. "Kasame Hoshigaki," Naruto said without turning around. "You are going to kill me." "Yes." "Is it going to be fast?" A pause. The water rippled around Naruto's feet. The wind off the ocean carried his voice back as if the wind were the thing speaking. "Probably." Kasame laughed. It came out of him as relief. "Good." The hidden mist jutsu rolled in. The mist on the coast doubled, tripled, became the full Kasame standard, which was less mist and more water in the air. The sky grayed. The ocean rose. 60 feet of water lifted itself in a dome around the two of them. The entire bay responding to Kasame's call. The ocean acknowledging its master. The fish that had been swimming in the dome looked confused for a moment. Then dove, water release. Great shark bullet. 5 sharks formed in the water of the dome, each one 20 feet long, each one made of compressed seawater, each one moving in a coordinated spiral toward the boy at the center. Naruto looked at the dome. "You try to hide a shark in a puddle," he said, "from a dragon." He exhaled. The water in the dome, 60 feet of it in every direction, met the heat coming off his body and turned to steam. All of it. At once, the dome did not collapse. The dome ascended. A column of white vapor erupted from the surface of the bay and climbed toward the stratosphere, and the ocean for 200 meters in every direction dropped 10 degrees in temperature, and birds along the coast left the cliffs, and a fishing village 3 miles north reported that evening that the air had gotten strange for a moment. Kisame stood in the vapor. He could not see. The air was hot. His chakra sense was active. He had spent 30 years being able to find anything in the water by chakra. He locked on. Samahata was raised. He turned in the direction of the lock-on. Naruto was behind him. Kisame did not know how. Kisame did not need to know. Some part of him, the long veteran part, accepted the fact and proceeded. He spun. Samahata was in the swing. 30 years of muscle memory completed the motion. Naruto caught the sword. Samahata bit at his palm. The sword's mouth, the rows of small fangs along its length, opened. The sword absorbed chakra. It was the sword's defining trait. It hit Naruto's palm and tasted what was inside and recoiled. The way something tastes a thing it cannot swallow and pulls back. The sword thrashed in his grip. It made a sound like a cat in a bag. Naruto held it still. "Stop," he told the sword. Samahata stopped. It went limp in his hand. It made one small whine. Then it settled. Naruto handed the sword back to Kisame. Kisame took it. He held it. He looked at the sword. He looked at Naruto. "You talked to my sword. I told it to stop. It listened. Everything listens eventually." Kisame laughed. The laugh came up from his belly and stayed there for a long minute. It was a good laugh. The laugh of a man who at the end of his career had finally walked into the fight he had been built for. He raised Samahata one last time. He set his stance. He gave everything he had. He was extraordinary, even now. The form was perfect. 30 years of expertise channeled into one final exchange. The strike came with the speed of a man whose body had been altered to be faster than men, with the weight of a sword that had a will of its own, with the chakra of an ocean behind it. Naruto met the strike with a single palm. The shockwave pushed the ocean back. A wave 10 feet high rolled outward in every direction and reached the cliffs and broke against them and made the gulls scream. The vapor in the air dispersed. The bay was suddenly visible again. Kasame was in the shallows. He was on his back. The wave that had been the ocean was draining off him. His eyes were on the sky. There was a hole through his chest. Samahada lay beside him in the surf, very still. Naruto stepped down off the water. He walked through the shallows. He stopped beside Kasame. "You were the best of them." Kasame smiled. His teeth were red. His voice was thin. "It might have been thank you. It might have been something else." The waves came in and took it, and the words were the ocean's. He stopped breathing. Naruto stood there for a moment. He looked at the body. He looked at the sword. He bent down. He picked up Samahada. The sword did not fight him. The sword had in some way understood that its master had passed and that this was the new order of things. "You will go to a quiet place," Naruto told the sword. "You will rest. You will be remembered." He carried the sword away from the body. He laid it on a high rock at the edge of the beach. He left it there. The next high tide would not reach it. The fishermen of the village would find it in the morning. They would look at the sword, and they would understand that they had been chosen as its keepers, and they would build a small shrine around the rock, and the sword would lie in the shrine for the rest of its existence, and people would come from 3 nations to see it, and no one would ever try to take it down. The sword had been claimed by someone with the authority to claim it, and given to a place with the authority to keep it. This was, in Kasame's last conscious thought, a better end than he had hoped for. The reports reached the Akatsuki cave in 2 days. Pain read them. He set them aside. He looked at Konan across the meeting space. "That is 4. Yes. And Itachi is dying. Yes." Pain's fingers on the chair arm tapped once. He had known about Itachi's illness for years. He had used it. He had factored it into every plan. He had built around it. The illness was part of the calculation. "Itachi will go on his own," Konan said. "I know. He should be allowed to." Pain looked at her. "You are saying we let him." "I am saying we let him." Pain did not respond. The room was silent. The numbers on the board did not move, but they shifted in everyone's head, which was a different kind of moving. Itachi went on his own. He left the cave that night. He did not say goodbye to anyone except Kasame's empty bed, which he stopped in front of for 1 minute and stood in front of and bowed to before he walked out. He went south. He went into fire country. He went to a place he had picked out years ago, a small empty village where the residents had abandoned their homes during a famine 40 years back and never returned. He sat on the steps of an empty tea house. He waited. Naruto came to him. It was a gray morning. The sky was the color of old steel. Naruto walked up the empty road and stopped at the edge of the village and looked at the man on the tea house steps. Itachi was thinner than he had been the last time. Itachi was always thin. Itachi was now thin in the way that men are thin when their bodies have been at war with themselves for years. He had a handkerchief in his hand. The handkerchief was red. The red was his and was fresh. Naruto looked at him for a long moment. "You came out here to die." Itachi put the handkerchief away. He stood up. He drew a kunai. His Mangekyo activated, what was left of it. One eye was nearly blind. The other ran at half capacity, the 3-pointed shuriken pattern flickering. "Sasuke needs to kill me," Itachi said. "Sasuke does not need anything from you except the truth. He will nevers." Itachi went still. "I told him," Naruto said, 2 years ago, in the hospital, after the valley. He cried for 6 hours and then he stopped, and he has been training every day since then with the goal of being strong enough to be useful to someone other than himself." A long silence. The wind moved a sign over the tea house. The sign creaked once. "He knows," Naruto said again, softer. The kunai came down. Itachi's hands went to his sides. He stood there in the empty village, and something in the set of his shoulders changed. He had been carrying a weight. The weight had become him. He had become the weight. For a moment, the boy underneath the weight was visible, a 21-year-old who had been an Anbu at 11 and a clan killer at 13 and a missing 9 since 14, and who had spent the last 7 years walking around pretending to be a monster because the village he loved had asked him to. "He does not hate me?" Itachi asked. "He is furious. And he loves you. And both of those things will take years to sort out, and he will sort them out. He is good at sorting things out when he stops being an idiot." Itachi closed his eyes. The Mangekyo faded. His regular eyes were tired. They were also wet. "Then what happens to me? You go home. I am dying. Yes. I have months, maybe 3, maybe 4. You knew? Yes. Why? Because I have been paying attention to you for 2 years. Itachi opened his eyes. "You go home," Naruto said. "You spend your 3 months in Konoha. You spend them with your brother. You die in your own bed. You have done your job. The job is done. The village owes you. I will collect on that debt for you, since you will not." He said it the way you say a hard truth, straight, without flinching, because flinching never makes the truth softer. "I need something from you first," Naruto added. "What?" "Pain's location. Everything you know about the masked man." Itachi opened his eyes fully. He sat down on the tea house steps. He patted the step next to him. Naruto sat. Itachi talked for 45 minutes. He talked about Madara. He talked about the masked man who called himself Madara and was someone else. He talked about the resurrection plan, the 10 tails, the eye of the moon, the statue, the cave in the mountains. He gave coordinates. He gave names. He gave the entire architecture of a 30-year machine. Naruto listened. He filed every piece of it. When Itachi finished, he was tired. He leaned back against the wall of the tea house. He looked at the gray sky. "I have always wanted to see my mother again." "You will." "You are sure?" "I am sure." They sat in silence for a long while. Then Naruto stood up. He held out his hand. Itachi took it. Naruto pulled him to his feet. They walked down the road together. They walked all the way to Konoha, which was 3 days. They did not hurry. Naruto matched his pace to a sick man's pace. Itachi told him stories about Sasuke as a child. Naruto listened to every one. They came up to the gate at sunset on the 3rd day. The gate guards saw them. Word spread through the village in the time it took the 2 of them to walk down the main street. By the time they reached the Hokage Tower, half the village was at the windows. The man on every bingo book, the murderer of the entire Uchiha clan, the missing nin who had haunted the village's worst nightmares, was walking up the main road in broad daylight, beside the village's living guardian, and the village did not know whether to scream or applaud, and so did neither. Sasuke was at the tower. Tsunade had sent for him. He was on the steps. He was pale. He had been told nothing except "Your brother is here." He saw them coming. Itachi stopped about 20 feet away from him. Naruto stayed beside Itachi. Sasuke stood on the steps. The 3 of them stood in this triangle for about 30 seconds. Then Sasuke walked down the steps. He walked across the cobblestones. He stopped a foot in front of his brother. He looked at his brother's face. Itachi was crying. Itachi did not cry, but Itachi was crying. Sasuke punched him. It was not a hard punch. It was the punch of a younger brother who had been holding a punch for 7 years. Itachi took it. His head turned. He did not move his feet. Sasuke punched him again. Same way. Itachi took it. Itachi made no defense. After the 3rd punch, Sasuke was crying too. He was crying so hard he could not see. He was hitting his brother's chest now with the side of his fist, the way a child hits something it cannot understand. Itachi caught him on the 5th strike, pulled him in, and the 2 of them stood there in the middle of the street holding each other in the kind of broken open way that only people who have been waiting a very long time hold each other. Naruto stepped back. He stepped back several paces. He turned. He walked away from the scene and went to Ichiraku and ordered ramen and ate it slowly and gave the brothers the dignity of their privacy. Itachi spent 3 months in Konoha. Tsunade put a medical team on him. The medical team kept him comfortable. They could not save him. He had known they could not save him. The point of the team was not the saving. The point was the comfort. He spent every day with Sasuke. They walked. They talked. They visited the Uchiha district, which was empty and which neither of them could fix, and they sat on the steps of their childhood home, and Itachi told Sasuke every story he had been carrying, every truth he had withheld, every reason behind every decision. Sasuke listened. Sasuke asked questions. Sasuke cried often. Sasuke did not pull away. In the 4th month, Itachi stopped getting out of bed. He was thin enough by then that the medical team came twice a day. Sasuke moved a chair into the room and slept in the chair. On the last night, Itachi was awake. The room was lit by a single lamp. Sasuke was holding his hand. Itachi looked at him and said, "Tell mother I am sorry." "Tell her yourself," Sasuke said. "You will tell her first." "All right. I love you, little brother." "I love you too." Itachi closed his eyes. Naruto was outside the door. He had been there all night. He had not gone in. He sat on the step in the corridor with his back against the wall. The window above him was open. He listened to the sound of the lamp burning. He listened to the sound of Sasuke breathing. He listened to the sound of the breath that Itachi did not take, which arrived with the kind of stillness that fills a room. He stayed on the step until morning. When Sasuke came out of the room, his eyes were red. Naruto stood up. Sasuke looked at him. Sasuke nodded once. Naruto nodded back. They did not speak. They walked out of the building together. They went and got ramen. Sasuke ate. Naruto paid. Tochi, who had heard, gave Sasuke a small nod when he handed him the bowl, the kind of nod that said, "I am sorry for your loss. I will say no more about it. Here is hot food." Sasuke ate the whole bowl. He ordered another. The list had 5 names crossed off. 5 remained. One of them was a snake. The snake had spent 2 years in a cave in the land of Earth, regrowing arms that were imperfect, regrowing his confidence in pieces, refusing to look in mirrors because his face still bore the half-melted memory of the day a boy had laughed at him in the forest of death. He had moved his base. He had moved it again. He had settled finally in a complex of caves on the border between Earth and Rice, where the geology was old and the chakra of the rock interfered with sensors, and where he had felt, for the first time in years, almost safe. His new lieutenants were 3. Karen sensed Naruto first. She was 16, sharp-tongued, with red hair and glasses, and a brain that ran 4 conversations at once. She was on the upper level of the base, calibrating the perimeter sensors. The base had perimeter sensors because Orochimaru had become a man who needed to know who was coming. The sensors were her project. She was good at it. She felt the approach as a tickle at the edge of her chakra sense. She frowned. She checked the calibration. She frowned harder. She walked to the window. She looked out. The cave entrance was about a mile away across a snowfield. The snowfield was empty. The cave entrance was empty. The chakra sense ramped up. She felt it climb. She felt it climb past the threshold for Jonin. She felt it climb past the threshold for Kagi. She felt it climb past the threshold she had set for the system to even register, and she felt the sensors crack at the registration limit, and she watched 2 of her 3 primary sensors go offline because they had no scale for what they were trying to measure. She turned around. She walked fast down the corridor. She found Yugo in his room. Yugo was 20. He was big. He had nature energy senses that operated differently than chakra senses, and his nature energy senses had told him in his own language that something on the scale of a small mountain range had begun walking toward the base. "Yugo," Karen said carefully, "there is someone outside. I think we should leave." Yugo looked at her. He looked out the window. He sat down slowly on the floor. "Yeah," Yugo said, "we should leave." Karen found Suigetsu. Suigetsu was in his jar, which was where Suigetsu lived when he was bored. Karen tapped the jar. "We are leaving." Suigetsu sloshed. "Why?" "Because there's a person outside that the sensors cannot read." "How big a person?" "The sensors broke." Suigetsu reconstituted himself. He looked at her. "Yeah, we are leaving." The 3 of them left through the back. Karen took her lab notebook. Yugo took a small bag. Suigetsu took his sword and most of a water bottle. They went up the back tunnel, out the back exit, and they ran across the snowfield in the opposite direction of the approach. They did not look back. They did not speak. They got 300 meters away, found a rock outcropping, and sat behind it. Karen opened her lab notebook. She wrote down the time. She had a sense, even then, that the time would be useful for the historical record. Naruto reached the cave entrance. The cave entrance was a pair of double doors set into the mountainside, reinforced with iron, sealed with chakra tags. It was the kind of door that had stopped armies. Orochimaru had spent 6 months on the security of this door. Naruto walked through it. The doors did not open. The doors ceased to be doors. He walked through them the way you walk through a curtain of beads. The iron crumbled around the shape of him. The seals scattered. The stone above the doorway slumped. Inside, alarms began to go off. Orochimaru was in the lab. He was standing at the central console. He had been running an experiment. The experiment was a flask of something that had been alive an hour ago. He had been about to make notes. The alarms had cut him off. The chakra reading on his sensors had cut his sensors off. He stood in the center of his lab. His regrown arms hung at his sides, slightly mismatched in length. The right one always a half-second behind in its responses. The alarms cut out. The footsteps in the corridor were unhurried. The wall of the lab caved inward. Naruto stepped through. He looked around. He took in the lab. He took in the tanks along the back wall, where the half-grown bodies floated in their solutions. He took in the shelves of scrolls. He took in the equipment. He took in the experiment on the console, the small flask of failure. He looked at Orochimaru. A snake, Naruto said, is a particular thing. It sheds its skin. It regrows. It survives by being patient and by being but the notice of things that could eat it. He took one step forward. I have noticed you. Orochimaru attacked. There was nothing else for him to do. He summoned. He had a scroll on his sleeve. He bit his thumb. He slammed the palm down on the floor. The seal flared. Manda came out of the smoke. The great serpent filled the lab. He was so large that the lab could not hold him, and so the lab began to come apart as he expanded into it. Walls cracked outward, ceiling lifted. The back third of the cave system simply collapsed under its own weight as the snake demanded space. Manda's head was wider than a building. His fangs were as long as flagpoles. His eyes were yellow and full of hate because Manda had spent 2 years in the snake realm with a headache, and Manda was furious to have been called. Manda turned to Naruto. Manda hissed. The hiss flattened the equipment on every surface. The tanks along the wall cracked. Solutions sloshed. Naruto looked up at Manda. He did not move. Dragon fear. He said it at conversational volume. In the confined space of the cave, with the great serpent towering over him, the technique had nowhere to go but inward. The fear hit Manda at point-blank range. It traveled across the snake's nervous system. It reached the part of every living thing that knows when something larger than itself has come into the room. It told that part what was standing on the floor. Manda recoiled. Manda, the great serpent of the Ryuchi cave, the boss snake, the king of his realm, who had eaten summons the size of buildings, who had not been afraid of anything since the second age of the world, dragged himself backward through the hole he had made in the ceiling, pulling his enormous coiled length up and out of the cave at a speed that was almost ludicrous, the way a startled cat reverses out of a closet. He hit the surface. He kept going. He summoned himself away. His own technique, the reverse summoning, came faster than he had ever used it. The smoke of his departure was still hanging in the air when the sound of his retreat had faded. Manda would never answer Orochimaru's call again. Manda would, in the snake realm that very afternoon, formally revoke the summoning contract with the human Orochimaru and post a notice in the assembly hall that the contract was now open for any other human to attempt, with the small additional notice that the previous holder had brought the great serpent into the proximity of a creature that no member of the Snake Clan should ever be brought into the proximity of, and that any future contract holder should be aware of this and should swear to never repeat the offense. The contract would not be renewed for 100 years. In the lab, Orochimaru was alone. He stood against the back wall. His regrown arms were trembling. He had been planning this moment for 2 years. He had been preparing techniques. He had been designing seals. He had assembled, in the corner of his workshop, a contingency that he had told himself was for this exact event. He looked at the contingency. He looked at the boy in the doorway. The contingency was useless. He understood this with the clarity that survival forces on a man in his last seconds. He had built the contingency assuming that the boy would arrive in the form Orochimaru had seen the last time. The boy in front of him was not in that form. The boy in front of him had grown taller, and the air around him had grown heavier, and the chakra emanating from him was a thing the contingency had never been designed to handle. "You can keep running," Naruto said. "You can shed every skin. You can move between bodies until the last star goes dark. Every body will have an address. I will always know it." He walked forward. The aura around him intensified. The crimson scales bloomed up his right arm. The energy in his palm gathered. "This ends here. Every experiment, every stolen life, every child you took apart looking for immortality, you were never going to find." Orochimaru opened his mouth. He had a final word ready. He had been working on it for 2 years. He had a final speech and a final transformation and a final escape technique layered on top of both, and he was going to use all three at once. The palm came down, the lab, the entire base, every floor, every wall, every experiment, every scroll, every body, and every tank became a glass plane. The destruction was contained. It was, for a breath of destruction released at full force, almost gentle. The blast went down rather than out. The mountain absorbed most of it. The surface above the cave system remained intact for about 30 seconds, then settled in on itself and became a glassy depression in the snow, 200 meters across, smooth as a frozen pond, glowing faintly red for the first hour. Karen watched from behind the rock outcropping. She had pulled her glasses off to clean them and put them back on. She was on her feet now, peering over the rock. The base was gone. The base was not damaged. The base was not destroyed. The base was gone. The mountain itself looked as if a giant had reached down with a thumb and pressed a divot into the snowfield. Steam rose from the divot. The steam smelled like nothing recognizable because everything that had been in the base was now in the steam, and the steam was thinning as it climbed. Naruto walked out of the divot. He walked across the glass. He came up to the rock outcropping. He stopped a few feet away. Karen came out from behind the rock. She came around it slowly, with her hands visible, with her brain running at 4,000 words a minute, and her mouth running slightly faster. "Who are you? What are you? How did you?" That was the whole base. We had 3 years of equipment in there. Do you have any idea how much 3 years of equipment costs? Also, we had research. Also, we had the three of us, and you knew we were here. You knew, didn't you? You knew exactly where we were. That is some sensing. My sensing is good, and I missed half of you. My sensors broke. Do you know how hard it is to break my sensors? Naruto Uzumaki, he said. She stopped. "Oh, you three left before it started." "Smart. I am very smart." "I see." He looked at her. There was something in his expression that took her a second to parse. It was, when she parsed it, the expression of a man who had noticed her, and who had registered the noticing as a thing to remember. She had been noticed by powerful men before. The noticing had, in every previous case, been unpleasant. The noticing in this case was a different category. He was looking at her the way a teacher looks at a promising student, which made it much more unsettling, because she had no framework for being looked at like that. "You three have nowhere to go," he said. "Come to Konoha. Tsunade will process you. None of you are on any kill list." He looked at Karen again, steady. He was thinking. "Your sensing ability. It is rare." "You noticed?" "I noticed things worth noticing." She opened her mouth. She closed it. She opened it again. She had nothing prepared for this. Behind her, Suigetsu had reformed and was leaning against the rock, looking deeply done with the day. Yugo was sitting on the rock, hands on his knees, watching Naruto with the expression of a man who had felt his nature energy senses recalibrate to an entirely new scale. "All right," Karen said, faster than she meant to. "Good. Just to be clear, not because you said so. I was going to leave anyway. You happen to be going the same direction. Of course. I am not following you. You are leading and I am behind you. Or different things. I understand. Do you have ramen in Konoha?" "Yes. Good ramen. The best. I will come then." "I had assumed." He turned. He started walking. The four of them followed. Naruto in front, Karen 2 steps behind talking, Suigetsu and Jugo bringing up the rear with the dazed look of men who had survived something only because they had run very fast in the right direction. The three of them moved into Konoha that month. Tsunade processed them. Karen took an apartment 3 blocks from Naruto's. Suigetsu got a job at a fish market and was bad at it and got fired and got another job at a different fish market and was better at it and stayed. Jugo worked with the village's animal handlers and discovered that he was good at calming traumatized creatures, and the work suited him, and he stayed too. That left 4 names. Pain, the masked man, Madara, the goddess. Pain came to him. Pain had decided that the destruction of his organization had to be answered with action. Pain had decided that if the boy was going to come for him eventually, Pain might as well force the timing. Pain came to Konoha. The 6 paths descended on the village like a judgment. They came from 6 directions at once. They came through the wall in the south. They came down from the air in the east. They came up from the river in the west. They came over the wall in the north. They came through the front gate in the second east, where the gate guards saw them coming, and managed to send the warning bell 3 full seconds before Ashurapath's missiles erased the gatehouse entirely. The wall behind the gatehouse came down in a section 100 meters wide. The village screamed. Anbu mobilized. Tsunade was on her feet within seconds, the Hokage's emergency seal active on her forehead before she was even fully out of her chair. Sakura was at the hospital. Sakura made every patient a priority and herself a triage center. Sasuke was at the training ground. Sasuke arrived at the wall in time to see Asurapath split a building in half with a missile, and to see Kakashi arrive on the other side of the building and engage. Kakashi engaged the path. The path was difficult. The path was beyond Kakashi's solo capacity. Kakashi knew this and continued to engage because the path was killing civilians, and the path was going to keep killing civilians until someone stopped it. And Kakashi was the someone closest to it. Naruto was 3 miles outside the village. He had been walking back from a contemplative morning at a small lake to the south. He had been holding a stone in his hand, a flat one, the kind you skipped, and had been about to skip it when the ground had given him the message. He felt it through the soles of his feet, the vibration, the heat of destruction at long distance. Registering in the air pressure, he turned around. He started walking. The walk became fast. The fast walk became a run. The run carried a contrail of scorched grass behind him, a perfect line of brown that the village's foresters would later mark with stakes and preserve as a kind of memorial. He hit the village wall at speed. He did not slow down. The stone of the wall parted around the shape of him, the way water parts around a fish, and he was through it and into the village, and then through 3 buildings, and then in the village center, where 6 identical figures with red hair and identical Akatsuki robes turned to face him at the same time. He stopped. The aura coming off him was visible. It bent the air in a halo around him. Nagato, he said, not Pain, not the 6 paths, Nagato, the man behind the puppets. You know my name, Devapath said. The voice was synchronized across all 6 bodies, but the lead body, Devapath, did the talking, Itachi told me, 2 years ago, before he came home. A pause. The pause was long. The paths went still in the way they went still when Nagato on the other end of the link was processing. Then, he came home. He died in a bed, with his brother there. It was the end he deserved. Another pause. You killed his killers. That is a different conversation. This is the current one. Devapath raised his hand. Almighty push? No, the technique came. Shinra Tensei, at full power. The gravitational shove that had leveled mountains. The buildings around Naruto went. They came apart in a blooming ring. Every wall, every roof, every street fixture within 100 meters of him compressed and flung outward at terminal velocity. The dust column that rose was visible from the eastern wall of the village. Naruto stood in the middle of it. His feet had not moved. The street under him had cracked. The buildings around him had gone. His jacket had moved a little. That was all. Almighty push, Naruto said. I felt that. He rolled his shoulders. Try again if you want. All 6 paths engaged at once. Asurapath's missiles came in low. Diva Path opened gravity wells in 3 directions. Human Path reached for his soul. Preta Path opened its absorption field. Animal Path summoned 6 summons at once, each one larger than the last. Naraka Path projected the King of Hell. It was the full Rinnegan arsenal deployed as a coordinated unit against a single target. Naruto used spatial manipulation. He stepped sideways through space. The Preta Path's absorption field was a sphere. Naruto stepped behind the sphere. The absorption found nothing. The human path's reach found a soul too large to grasp. Naruto closed his hand around the human path's outstretched arm and pulled instead, and the path was uprooted from the ground, dragged through the air by its own arm, and slammed into the Preta Path. The two paths went through a building together. The building came down on them. Asura Path's missiles hit empty street. Naruto was already through the ring. He was beside the Deva Path. He grabbed the Deva Path's collar. "Where is Nagato?" "You will never." Dragon fear. Naruto said it at conversational volume into the ear of the Deva Path. The path seized. The Rinnegan eyes lost focus. Even through a remote system, even through chakra rods at distance, a fraction of the fear traveled the link back to the body somewhere in the village. Nagato in his tower several blocks away felt it. The wheelchair he sat in shook. The machines around him rattled. The pressure differential was, for Naruto, a beacon. He turned his head. He registered the beacon. He fixed the location. He set the Deva Path back on its feet. The path stumbled. He walked. The Animal Path's summons came at him as he crossed the avenue. He did not slow. The first summon, a multi-headed dog the size of a horse, met him head on. It met his palm and caught fire and went down in pieces. The second summon, a giant centipede, wrapped him. He breathed once and the wrapping became ash. The third summon, a flying chimera, dove from above. He raised one finger and the chimera was bisected. The Naraka Path at the corner of the avenue opened the King of Hell. The King of Hell rose out of the earth, vast, purple, mouth open, ready to call the boy to judgment and pull truth from him. The King of Hell looked at Naruto. Naruto looked at the King of Hell. The King of Hell looked away first. The mouth closed. The eyes lowered. The technique simply withdrew. The Naraka Path stood there, mouth open, chakra at its fingertips, stunned at the disobedience of its own technique. Naruto walked past. He reached the tower. The tower was an ordinary apartment building in the eastern quarter that Pain had taken over for the operation. 6 chakra rods extended from the upper floor antenna, and the rods routed the chakra to the 6 bodies in the village. He went up through the wall, straight up, on his feet, walking up the stone face the way a man walks up stairs. He came through a window on the top floor. The room was small. The room contained a wheelchair. The wheelchair contained a withered, ancient figure with red hair and Rinnegan eyes burning in a face that was mostly determination, and a little of the boy he had been 40 years ago. Konan was there. She was standing in the corner. She had her hands at her sides. She was wearing her cloak. She looked at him. He looked at her. The recognition was several recognitions at once. He had known her face for years now. He had folded paper with her. He had sat with her in tea houses and bought her noodles and watched her fold cranes from the corner of a napkin. The recognition between them was not a formality. "You came to watch," he said. "I came to stop this." "Which part?" She paused. "I do not know yet." He turned to Nagato. What followed was not a fight. It was a conversation. Nagato talked. He talked about Pain. He talked about Yahiko. He talked about the village that had burned and the teacher who had abandoned them, and the system that had chewed through people the way a mill chews through wheat. He talked like a man who had been rehearsing this argument for 30 years, polishing every line, sharpening every example, building the case for the verdict he had already passed on the world. Naruto listened. He listened to every line. When Nagato finished, he was breathing hard. The breathing took a great deal out of him. The body in the wheelchair was running on willpower and a thin chakra connection to a statue in another country. "You are right about the system," Naruto said. "You are right about the pain. You are right that the world grinds people into the ground and calls it necessity." Nagato waited. "You built a machine to hurt the world back. The machine hurts people who had nothing to do with your pain. That is the part you got wrong." Silence. "Then what should I have done?" Nagato asked. "What Jiraiya wanted," Naruto said. "What Yako died trying to do. What you stopped believing was possible because it hurt too much to keep believing." Nagato closed his eyes. The closing of them lasted a long time. When he opened them, the burning in the Rinnegan had gone down. "I can fix what was done to the village," he said. "Rinne rebirth. It will cost my life." "I know. Will that be enough? For you to let me go? To choose how I end this? Naruto looked at him. He looked at the man behind 30 years of violence and found, under all of it, the boy who had wanted the world to be better and had stopped knowing how. Yes. Nagato closed his eyes. His hands rose. They were thin. They were shaking. The seals he formed were the seals of the outer path, the technique that had been the last gift of the Sage of Six Paths, the rebirth that pulled life out through the hands of the user and put it into the world. Outer path, samsara of heavenly life. The technique released, light came out of Nagato's hands. The light went through the floor. It went through the walls. It went out into the village, into every body that had been broken, into every corpse that had been laid out, into every wound that had not yet closed. The technique did not raise the recently dead. It refilled them. It returned to each broken thing what had been taken from it. The buildings reformed. The streets repaired. The dust pulled itself out of the air and back into the stone it had been. Across the village, Ambu sat up out of the rubble. Civilians who had been pulled from collapsed homes opened their eyes. A child whose mother had been struck down in the market street found her mother sitting up, looking around, asking what had happened. In the tower, Nagato exhaled. The air came out of him and did not return. His body settled into the wheelchair, ancient and empty. The husk a man becomes when he has given everything he has. Naruto stood in the room. Konan went to the wheelchair. She put her hand on Nagato's shoulder. She closed her eyes for one moment. When she opened them, she looked at Naruto. He chose right at the end, Naruto said. She nodded. What happens now? She asked. Now, he said, there is one more name on the list, and a face I need to look at before I can put a name to it. He held out his hand. She looked at it. She looked at him. She took it. Tsunade arrived at the tower an hour later. She brought a medical team. She brought an honor guard. She bowed to Konan. Konan bowed back. Tsunade looked at Nagato and her hand shook because she was a medical ninja, and she understood in her bones what Rinna Rebirth had cost. She had felt the heartbeats restart across the village. She had been at her window when it had happened. She had stood there for a long time, and her medical sense had told her, line by line, how a soul had been spent in payment for thousands. She had a flag draped over Nagato's body. She had it carried out with respect. The funeral was held 3 days later in the village's central park, and half the village attended, even though half the village had no idea who the man had been an hour before he had saved them. The other half knew exactly who he had been, and the other half came anyway, and the other half wept. Konan stayed in the village for 2 weeks. She walked with Naruto in the evenings. They did not talk much. They did not need to. On the day she left, she gave him a paper flower, folded weighted with a small stone in the center so it would not blow away. He put it on his desk. It stayed there for a decade. That left 3 names. The masked man came to him. Naruto did not have to go looking. The masked man had been watching the village's destruction and reconstruction from a hidden vantage, and the masked man had made a decision, and the masked man had walked to a field in the land of fire that he had picked for the meeting, and he had stood there and he had waited. Naruto came to the field. He arrived as the sun was setting. He walked across the long grass. The masked man was a single figure in the middle, the orange spiral mask, the Akatsuki cloak, the single eye hole, the Kamui flickering around him, the dimensional overlap that made him untouchable. Naruto stopped 20 feet away. Take that off. I am afraid I cannot. Take it off, or I take it off. A pause. The mask came off. Obito Uchiha looked at him with one Sharingan and one regular eye. The face was half stone, half man, the right side a network of scars that had healed into ridges, the left side ordinary. The expression was the expression of a man who had forgotten what it felt like to be a person and was dimly aware that he had forgotten something. You know what I want, Obito said. Infinite Tsukuyomi. Everyone in a dream. The war ends because everyone is asleep. You say it like it is a bad thing. You want to put the world to sleep because the world is too painful to stay awake in. That is a coward's answer. Obito's Sharingan flared. You do not know what I lost. I know what you lost. Everyone knows. You have been leaving evidence for 30 years. You lost a girl you loved and the world became unacceptable. I understand that. I am not dismissing that. Then, I am telling you that Rin Nohara died on a bridge, and she would be furious with what you built in her name." The silence after that was the loudest sound in the field. The wind paused. The grass stopped moving for a second. Obito's Kamui spun. He phased. One hand, one arm vanishing into the dimensional overlap, the standard reflex of his last 30 years, the thing that had kept him alive through every confrontation. The hole in space was open. He was halfway through it. Naruto used spatial manipulation. Naruto's technique was older than the Kamui. The Kamui borrowed dimensional space. Naruto's technique owned it. He reached into the overlap. He did not phase in. He reached, like reaching into a coat pocket. He grabbed Obito's arm on the other side. He pulled. Obito came out of the dimension, the way a fish comes out of water, gasping, disoriented, the space-time technique collapsing because someone had grabbed the anchor on the other side and pulled harder than dimensions were used to being pulled. He hit the ground. He was on his hands and knees. The Kamui's eyes spun once and stopped. Naruto held him by the arm. He did not strike. He looked at him. The infinite Tsukuyomi requires the 10 tails and Madara Uchiha's Sharingan. You will not get either. Madara is next on my list, and the 10 tails has not been assembled. Your plan is over. The plan was over the day I came into the world. You have spent 30 years building toward a door that has no key. Obito said nothing. You have a choice, Naruto said. You can tell me where Madara is planning to be resurrected. You can go find a place in the world that is worth staying awake for, or I can put you in the ground with the rest of the list. Obito looked up at him. He really looked. Past the power, past the crimson eyes, at the boy underneath. A boy with a dead family and a village that had hated him, who had decided somewhere along the way that the world was worth staying in. The contrast was hard. It was the kind of hard that breaks something inside a person. The breaking is necessary for what comes next. I will tell you, Obito said. He talked. He talked for an hour. He talked about Kabuto Yakushi and the Edo Tensei resurrection plan for Madara, and the cave in the mountains, and the statue, and the timing. He gave coordinates. He gave names. He gave the schedule of a 30-year machine. Naruto listened. When Obito finished, Naruto let go of his arm. He stepped back, find something. It was a dismissal. It was also a second chance. Obito understood both halves of it. He stood up. He looked at the mask on the ground at his feet. He looked at it for a long time. He did not pick it up. He turned and he walked away across the long grass path, and the sun set behind him as he went. Where he ended up was a small ruin in the Uchiha district, where the roof had partially fallen in, but the storage room was intact. He found Rin's old headband in a chest at the back. He sat on the floor. He held the headband. He held it for a very long time. That was all. 2 names left. Madara Uchiha did not need to be summoned to a field. Madara was being brought back into the world by Kabuto Yakushi in a cave in the mountains on the border of the land of hot springs, on a schedule Obito had given him, on a date Naruto had marked in his head. Naruto arrived early. He arrived 12 hours before the resurrection. He stood at the entrance of the cave. He did not enter. He sat down on a rock. He waited. Kabuto, inside the cave, was not aware of him. Kabuto's senses had been tampered with by the long use of Sage Mode. Kabuto's setup was elaborate. Kabuto had been preparing this resurrection for months. The coffin was ready. The seal was ready. The chakra reservoirs were full. Kabuto, who had spent 2 years operating in the shadow of a man who could erase him at any time, was about to bring back the most powerful Uchiha who had ever existed. And Kabuto believed, in his heart, that the resurrected Madara would be enough to handle the boy from Konoha. Kabuto was about to learn that he was wrong. The resurrection went as planned. Madara came up out of the coffin. He was complete. He had his Rinnegan, he had his Sharingan, he had Hashirama's cells. He had every advantage a man could be reborn with. He stood up. He stepped down out of the coffin. He looked at Kabuto. You have done well, Madara said. Kabuto bowed. Where is the boy? Madara asked. Outside. He has been there for an hour. Madara looked at the cave entrance. Then we go out to meet him. He walked out of the cave. Kabuto followed 3 paces behind. The world outside was bright. Madara had not seen sunlight in 100 years. He took it in for a moment, allowed himself the luxury of a single appreciative breath, and then turned his attention to the boy on the rock. Naruto stood up. Madara looked at him. The Rinnegan eyes scanned him. The reading came back. The reading was wrong. The chakra signature did not match any human category. The scale was wrong. The energy profile flickered between flesh and something older. You, Madara said, are an interesting anomaly. Madara Uchiha, the dream of Indra, the ambition that outlived the man, the plan that needed 100 years to finish starting. You speak as if you know me. I have been through your people one by one. Hidan, Kakuzu, Sasori, Deidara, Kisame, Orochimaru. Nagato chose differently. The masked man walked away. And here you are. The last piece. He took one step forward. The grass under his feet browned. It was never a war. It was a list. Madara smiled. It was a confident smile. It was the smile of a man who had been in his first life, the apex of his species. Then let us see what you have learned, boy. Madara opened his Susanoo. The ribcage formed first, purple-blue energy, vast, the size of a building. Then the arms, then the head, then the legs, then the armor that covered all of it. 300 feet of perfect Susanoo rose into the sky over the cave, and Kabuto, behind Madara, fell to his knees from the chakra pressure alone. The Susanoo raised its arm. The arm wielded a blade the size of a tower. Tengai Shinsei. The technique pulled meteors out of the upper atmosphere. 6 of them. Each one the size of a small mountain, each one falling through the troposphere on a converging path, each one aimed at the boy in the field below. Naruto looked up at the sky. Partial manifestation. The wings came out. Full wingspan this time. The full draconic configuration. The wings so wide they cast a permanent shadow across the field. The horns rose. The scales coated his arms, his shoulders, his chest, his back. His eyes went fully reptilian, burning red. The pupils slit. He flew. He went up to meet the meteors. He met the first one with both hands. He caught it. The weight of it pushed him down through several thousand feet of air before he stopped. And he held it, and he pivoted, and he threw it. He threw it back. The meteor met the second meteor in midair. The collision detonated above the upper atmosphere. The flash of it was visible from 3 countries. The shock wave dispersed 2 of the remaining meteors into smaller fragments. Naruto turned in the air and met the third meteor with a breath of destruction. A wide one, building class, the beam so dense it left an afterimage on the retina of anyone who looked at it. The beam met the meteor and pushed it up and through the upper atmosphere and out into the void. The fourth meteor came down through the cleared zone. Naruto met it with his shoulder. The impact registered on geological monitors in 3 nations. The field below crumpled. The cave entrance partially collapsed. Kabuto, at the edge of the field, was thrown back 50 meters. The 5th and 6th meteors had been fragmented. The fragments rained over the area. Naruto was already among them, moving through the falling debris, knocking each fragment off course with strikes that went too fast for the human eye. Madara watched. His Rinnegan recorded everything. He had built his Susanoo around the assumption that nothing in the world could match it. He had been right about that for 100 years. He was watching the assumption come apart. He felt, for the first time in a long time, the absence of something he had been certain of. He did not enjoy the feeling. He attacked. Limbo clones came out of his Susanoo. 4 of them, invisible to ordinary eyes, ghost duplicates that operated on a half-step adjacent reality, each of them with the strength and chakra of Madara himself. Naruto saw them. The Dragon Monarch senses operated on a layer of perception. The Limbo clones did not have a defense against. He turned in the air. He met the first clone with a breath of destruction. The clone vanished. He spun. He met the second clone with a closed fist. The clone vanished. He turned again. He met the third clone with the edge of one wing. The wing carved through it as a blade carves through paper. The clone vanished. The 4th clone tried to retreat. He caught it by the ankle with spatial manipulation, dragged it back, and ended it with a breath of destruction at point-blank range. Madara generated truth-seeking balls. They formed around his Susanoo's head. 8 of them, each one a sphere of black-gray nothingness, each one a void that erased anything it touched, each one operating on the principle of denial of existence. He sent them in a coordinated formation. Naruto met them with a beam. The breath of destruction collided with the truth-seeking balls, and the resulting flash of light was visible from 3 countries. The 2 most absolute energies in the world canceled each other out. The shockwave from the cancellation flattened a forest below the battle. Trees came down in a perfect radial pattern. When the flash cleared, 4 of the truth-seeking balls had been consumed. The other 4 had shattered. Madara's reserves had been measurably depleted. Madara raised both hands. Dust release, detachment of the primitive world. The technique formed in the air between the 2 of them. A cube, then a sphere, then both. The dust release was a technique that had erased mountains. It operated on the molecular level. It dissolved what it touched. It was a continental scale technique. Madara had mastered it. Naruto met it with dragon fear. He turned in the air. He faced the Susanoo. He opened his mouth. The fear was not a sound this time. It was a wave of authority, the kind of pressure that affected souls before it affected bodies. Dragon fear. The wave hit the Susanoo. The Susanoo, which was willpower made physical, which was a legendary warrior's fighting spirit given armored form, flickered. It cracked. The purple-blue energy that made up its plating thinned, then darkened, then began to peel. The fear hit the soul inside. Madara Uchiha, whose soul was the most stubborn and magnificent soul the shinobi world had produced, whose ego had outlasted his death, whose ambition had remained intact across 100 years of imprisonment in a cave statue, flinched. It was a small flinch. It lasted a fraction of a second. It was enough. The perfect Susanoo collapsed. The construct came apart in panels, the armor flaking away, the giant figure deflating. Madara was left standing in the field, bare, no armor, no construction. His chest was heaving, not because he was tired, but because his body had decided to react before his mind had given it permission. He looked up at Naruto, who was still in the air. "What are you?" "The end of your era." Naruto came down. His body lit up with full draconic aura. The heat of him was so intense that the ground under his feet became lava as he walked. Kabuto, at the edge of the field, was already running. Naruto reached Madara. He grabbed him. The scales on his arms locked around Madara's chest. Madara raised both hands to break the grip, and his hands met the scales, and his hands found nothing to leverage against. Breath of destruction. The beam fired through Madara's chest at point-blank range. It drilled down through the field below them. It went through soil, through bedrock, through the mantle below the bedrock. It carved a glassy column a kilometer deep into the planet. When the beam ended, Madara Uchiha was in 2 halves. The Edo Tensei immediately began to regenerate him. The 2 halves pulled toward each other. The flesh knitted. The Edo Tensei was the technique that had made resurrected souls invincible. Every wound, no matter how absolute, was undone by the technique's logic. Naruto watched it. He set the 2 halves down. He stepped back. He breathed in. Full manifestation. He had not said those words in 2 years. He had never said them in front of an audience. He had always held back. Partial. Fragment. Fraction, not now. The transformation was instant. The dragon form erupted out of the boy's body. The wings became wings on a scale that put the perfect Susanoo to shame. The wingspan reached the low clouds. The horns extended until they crowned the sky. The scales coated his entire body. His teeth lengthened. His tail, which had not appeared in any previous form, came out and swept the field behind him into rubble. He was 300 feet of fire and will. He was still recognizably Naruto. The shape of him, the crimson eyes, the whisker marks now carved into draconic plates along his snout. But the scale was the scale of a being that did not belong in a field, that had been imported into this world from somewhere else, that had been installed in a body and was finally allowed to fully extend. Madara, regenerating on the ground, looked up. His Rinnegan saw the dragon. The Rinnegan recorded what it saw. The Rinnegan, which had been the apex of dojutsu for 100 years, registered the input as data the system was not built to handle. The dragon brought one claw down on Madara. The Edo Tensei shattered. It did not break. It did not crack. It shattered. The immortality logic of the technique, which had outranked death itself, was overwhelmed by the authority of destruction. The highest authority among the 9 monarchs, the force that outranked entropy, the technique's logic broke. The soul it was holding was released. Madara Uchiha, dead for 100 years, was dead again. This time, finally completely, the dragon shrank. Naruto landed in the field. He shook out his shoulders. He was 16 again, in a crimson jacket, hands going back into his pockets. The horns retracted, the scales receded into skin. He turned. He looked at the cave entrance where Kabuto had been. Kabuto had not gotten far. Kabuto was about 300 meters into the trees and running. Naruto raised one hand. He did not point. He just opened the palm. A small thread of crimson energy crossed the distance. It hit Kabuto in the back of the leg. Not in the spine. In the leg. Kabuto went down. He did not die. He lay in the leaves with his leg unable to move and waited. Naruto walked through the field. He walked past the dead body of Madara Uchiha. He walked into the trees. He came up beside Kabuto. He looked down at him. You brought him back? Yes. Why? I wanted to be the one who... You are a small man, Kabuto. You have been a small man for a long time. You have built around your smallness. You have copied other people. You have stolen abilities. You have made yourself into a chimera and called it growth. Kabuto said nothing. You will go to Konoha. You will be processed. You will spend the rest of your life teaching at the orphanage you grew up in. You will tell the children how to be honest with themselves about what they want so they do not become you. He bent down. He picked up Kabuto. He carried him back to the field. He set him on the grass. Walk, Naruto said, or do not. Konoha is east. They will receive you. He turned away. He did not look back. Kabuto, after an hour of trying, dragged himself to his feet. He started walking east. He arrived at Konoha 3 days later. He was processed. He was assigned to the orphanage. He worked there for the rest of his life. He was, against every prediction anyone could have made about him, an excellent teacher. The children at the orphanage loved him. He was buried in the village's cemetery 30 years later. The funeral was small. It was attended by every child he had ever taught. There were by then several hundred of them. Across the smoking field where Madara had stood, the 4 shinobi armies of the Alliance, who had been mobilizing for a war they expected to last weeks, watched a 300-foot dragon shrink back into the form of a teenager. They had been on the move for 2 days. They had been told to expect a fight against 10,000 Edo Tensei soldiers, led by Kabuto Yakushi and the resurrected Madara Uchiha. They had been bracing. The bracing was unnecessary. They stood at the edge of their staging area and watched the boy in the crimson jacket walk back toward Konoha across the field. A foot soldier at the back of the Konoha contingent said, very softly, to the soldier next to him, I thought he was from our village. The soldier next to him said, He is. He is a dragon. He is from our village and he is a dragon. Both. The foot soldier nodded as if that made sense, which it did in the new world that had begun about 30 seconds earlier. The 4 armies stood down. The war ended before it had begun. The wagons that had been carrying weeks of supplies turned around. The kunoichi who had been writing farewell letters at the back of the column tore them up. The medics who had been preparing field hospitals folded their tents. The whole alliance, 10,000 strong, walked back to their villages. The Tsuchikage, the Mizukage, and the Raikage met 3 days later in a conference room in the Land of Iron. Tsunade was there too, on Naruto's behalf. The 4 Kages discussed the post-war structure of the world. The discussion lasted 6 hours. At the end of it, the Tsuchikage threw his report across the room and stood up and said, I am too old for this. The Raikage punched a wall. The wall did not break. The Mizukage read the report a 3rd time and made tea for everyone. The tea was excellent. The structure they agreed on was an alliance, the 5 great nations as a single defensive bloc, a council to be convened on threats above Kage class, and a standing agreement that any nation that attempted to harm Konoha would be answered by the entire alliance. The agreement was also a kind of insurance. If anything ever did manage to harm Konoha, it was the kind of thing all 5 nations needed to know about anyway. The agreement would hold for 50 years. That left one name on the list. The last name was not Madara, although Madara was crossed off. The last name was the door behind Madara, the thing that had been waiting on the other side of the resurrection plan, the original origin of every problem the shinobi world had been trying to solve. Kaguya Otsutsuki came through anyway. She came through the cracks left in the world by Madara's death and the Ten Tails fragments. She came the way gods come, without warning, without announcement, through a door that opened itself because it outranked the world's opinion on whether it should open. The dimension around her warped. Gravity shifted. The air cracked. She appeared in the middle of the smoking field where the Madara battle had ended an hour earlier. The 4 shinobi armies were 3 miles away, walking home. The field was empty, except for Naruto, who had been about to leave, who had stopped, who had felt the door open. He turned around. She was there. White-haired, white-skinned, 2 horns like a rabbit's ears, 3 Sharingan Byakugan eyes, her robes the color of moonlight. Her face had no expression that humans could read. She did not have human faces in her experience to model off of. The infinite Tsukuyomi began without the apparatus that was supposed to launch it. She did it herself, because she was the original source of the technique, and she did not need the moon's light the way lightning does not need a power plant. The sky turned white. Across the world, every person on every road and in every house dropped where they stood, their eyes rolling back, their bodies wrapped in tendrils of light, their souls being pulled into a dream. Every person, except one. Naruto stood in the white light. It washed over him. The infinite Tsukuyomi reached out for his mind and encountered the Dragon Monarch's soul and decided, after a moment of trying, that it was going in a different direction. Kaguya looked at him across the empty field. "You," she said, not a greeting, an identification. "You want to harvest the chakra," he said. "You built it. You want it back. It was never theirs. It is theirs now. That is what giving something means." She came at him. The dimensional control she exercised was absolute. She shifted them through every space she owned simultaneously. Ice dimension, lava dimension, gravity dimension, sand dimension, void. Each one a separate physics, each one a separate way to kill. In the ice dimension, every breath was a cloud, and every surface was a mirror. She launched bones from her body that erased existence on contact. He met them with breath of destruction, the 2 erasures meeting and canceling. She opened her 3 eyes to their full range and fired truth-seeking balls that curved through the dimensional space, guided not by angle but by intent. He moved. He used spatial manipulation. He had used it against her sister technique 100 times. He had used it to step between Madara's limbo clones. He used it now to step through her dimensional shifts, anchoring his own movement to a frame she did not control. He kept pace. In the lava dimension, the air was molten and the ground was a slow ocean of fire. She liked this dimension. It had never failed her. He stepped into it, and he was unaffected, because the dimensional fire was not as hot as the fire he carried inside, and Antares had set fire to galaxies for sport, and the lava dimension's heat was, to him, room temperature. In the gravity dimension, weight was variable. She turned him heavy. She turned him 1,000 times his ordinary mass. He stayed standing. She turned him weightless. He did not float, because weight was a property she had no jurisdiction over with regard to him. He was held to whatever surface he wanted to be held to by something that operated below her level of control. In the void, there was no air. He had no need of air. She came at him with everything. She launched bones through her own palms, opened her chest cavity to fire, summoned spectral copies of her 2 sons to flank him. He met every attack with the appropriate counter. He did not strike back yet. He was watching her. He was watching her. Because in the honest part of his nature that Antares had left behind, he found her interesting. She was the first thing in this world, in this lifetime, that had made him pay attention in 2 years. In a pause between exchanges, they were back in the ice dimension, breathing in clouds, both of them on opposite sides of a frozen field. He said, "You are the first thing in this world that has made me pay attention in 2 years." She did not respond. "You will not win," he said, "but you have earned a moment of my attention. That is more than the others got." She came at him again. He decided. He went full manifestation. The dragon form filled the ice dimension. The walls of the dimension flexed against the heat. The ice melted. The mirrors cracked and ran. Naruto's wings extended to their full span. His eyes burned. The aura around him expanded until it filled half the dimension. He grabbed her. He did it carefully. The careful, specific grip of a being that did not want to break what it was holding, only stop it. His claws closed around her shoulders. He held her at distance. She was small in his hand. She was the size of a doll. He brought his head down. He opened his mouth. The crimson light gathered in his throat. Not a beam this time. Not destruction. Something else. Something he had only used twice before in his life. once on Kurama the first night, and once on Shukaku on the day of the invasion 3 years ago. Dragon fear. He said it at point-blank range. Into the god of fear traveled the way fear traveled. It reached past her chakra. It reached past her body. It hit the part of her that was the original of her, the soul that had been the first, the ancestor of every soul that had come after. She froze. Kaguya Otsutsuki, the origin of chakra, the ancestor of power, the progenitor of everything the shinobi world had been fighting over for 1,000 years, froze in his grip. She had felt fear once before. She had felt it on the day she had looked at her own children and understood that they were going to be more than she had intended. She had buried that fear under a millennium of plans. She had forgotten what it felt like. She remembered now. Naruto did not kill her. He sealed her. The dragon form produced a technique that Antares had used to seal threats too old to destroy, a draconic binding seal. The energy of the Dragon Monarch poured into a containment that the authority of destruction could sustain indefinitely. The seal manifested as a small slip of paper. The paper was black. The writing on it was crimson. He pressed the paper against her forehead. She went into the seal. She went without fighting. The fear had taken from her the will to fight. The will would return eventually. The seal would hold. The seal had been designed to hold things that did not have time as a constraint. Her dimensions collapsed. The infinite Tsukuyomi ended. The white light withdrew from the sky of the world. Across every road and every house, every person who had been wrapped in tendrils of light opened their eyes and sat up and looked at the sky and did not understand what had happened. Naruto landed in the smoking field. He shrank back to his human form. The slip of paper was in his hand. Kakashi arrived in the field a few minutes later. He had been a few miles away, at the staging area, and he had been awake when the white light came, and he had been awake when the white light left. He had moved fast. His Sharingan was uncovered. His one eye was wide. Naruto walked over to him. He held out the slip of paper. "Keep this somewhere safe." Kakashi looked at the slip of paper. "What is it?" "A goddess. She was causing problems." He walked away. Kakashi looked at the slip of paper in his hand for a very long time. He took it back to the village. He took it to the Hokage Tower. He took it to a vault that Tsunade had built 3 years earlier for exactly this kind of situation, which Kakashi had been mocking her for at the time, and which Tsunade had built because she had been Hokage long enough to know that the kind of artifact you needed a vault for was the kind that arrived on a Tuesday with no warning. The slip of paper went into the vault. The vault was sealed. The vault remained sealed for 30 years. After that, it remained sealed another 30. The list was complete. Naruto walked back to the village from the field. He walked the whole way. He did not hurry. The sun set behind him as he walked. The road was empty. The world had just woken up from a dream it would talk about for the rest of its existence, and the boy who had ended the dream walked home with his hands in his pockets and the seal of a goddess in another man's vault. He arrived at Ichiraku at full dark. Tochi was closing up. Tochi looked up. Tochi's face went through 3 expressions in 1 second. "The usual," Naruto said. Coming up. 10 years passed. This is the part of the story that runs at a different tempo, slower, warmer. The war is over. Every name on the list is crossed off. The world has made a careful peace with what it knows about Naruto Uzumaki. The peace is largely built on no one wanting to find out what he does when the peace ends. He is Hokage. This is not a campaign. It is not an election. Tsunade retired 5 years after Madara's death and named him as her successor. The council debated the succession exactly once. The temperature in the council chamber rose 12 degrees without visible cause. The debate ended. He runs the village. He runs it well. He is direct, efficient, and holds a monthly open council where any citizen can bring a problem, and he will listen. He listens to all of them. He acts on most of them. The complaints that go unanswered in his administration are the kind of complaints that no Hokage has ever been able to do anything about, like the price of grain in summer and the noise of the temple bells before sunrise. He is the Hokage everyone is most afraid of in the village's history. Crime rates have hit a historic low. The two facts are connected. He has not had to fight in almost a decade. The world has accepted the new arrangement. The 5 great nations have a treaty that has held. The smaller villages have lined up under the alliance. The bandits have, on the whole, found other careers. The women in his life are not many. They are specific. Conan came to Konoha 3 years after the Pain invasion. She came during a rainstorm, which she found appropriate. She did not stay. She had a country to rebuild. She had taken the leadership of the Hidden Rain after Nagato's death, and she had spent 2 years putting it back together. The orphanage, the schools, the streets. She had built what Yahiko had wanted to build. She had done it without violence. She had done it the way Jiraiya had wanted her to do it, which she would not have admitted to Jiraiya, but which Jiraiya understood without being told. She comes to Konoha twice a year for diplomatic summits. She stays 10 days each time. She and Naruto walk the village at night when it is raining, which it does often when she is in town, which the meteorologists have begun to find statistically unusual. They talk about Nagato. They talk about Yahiko. They talk about the world before it was put back together. They talk about everything sometimes, and sometimes they walk in complete silence, and both kinds are exactly the right amount. She gave him another paper flower, 10 years on from the first, weighted at the center the same way. He keeps it on the desk beside the original. The 2 flowers sit in a small glass dish. He has not let them be moved. Karen stayed in Konoha and built the sensing division from scratch. The sensing division became, under her leadership, the most accurate chakra intelligence unit in the world. She built the program with 3 other people who she had handpicked, who she had trained, who she had pushed and yelled at and pulled out of bed at 4 in the morning, and who would, every one of them, have walked through fire for her. The division operated on protocols she had invented. The protocols were copied by every other village within 5 years. The protocols were copied with attribution, which Karen personally enforced via diplomatic letter, written in handwriting that bordered on offensive. She and Naruto argue constantly. She has the fastest mouth in the village. He has infinite patience for fast mouths because he finds them honest. Their arguments are always about something real, a budget item, a personnel decision, a security oversight, a phrasing in a treaty. She tells him when he is wrong. He listens. He occasionally agrees. He occasionally does not. When he does not, she yells. When he does, she also yells, but in a different register, which she will deny is a different register. One night in the 3rd year of his Hokage tenure, the 2 of them were in his office past midnight. Mission reports were spread across the desk. They were both working through a backlog. She had been reviewing intelligence files for hours. Her glasses were halfway down her nose. He had been signing approvals with one hand and reading with the other. She fell asleep in the chair across from him. She did this in the middle of a sentence. She said, and the 3rd report from the North Sector indicates that the chakra signature is, and her head dipped, and her hand fell still on the report, and her breathing slowed. He looked up. He looked at her. He stood. He took his Hokage jacket off the back of his chair. He walked around the desk. He laid the jacket over her without waking her. He turned the lamp down to a faint glow. He went back to his side of the desk. He kept working until dawn. When she woke up, the jacket was over her. The light was low. He was at the desk signing the last paperwork of the night. She did not say thank you. She did not need to. She picked up where she had left off in the sentence, finished the report, and went home as the sun was rising. The rest of his personal life is his. The story does not need to detail everything. The point is, he is not alone. He learned this from the people around him. He is a Dragon Monarch who found that the thing he was protecting all along was not just the village on the map, but the people in it. He has 2 children. The first is a girl. She is 8. Her name is Himari. Her hair is black with one streak of red that runs down the right side, like a brushstroke. Her eyes are blue. She has no draconic features. She was born human, fully, completely. But she has her father's stubbornness in a way that Naruto recognizes instantly. And Jiraiya, who is 65 and still alive and still complaining about it, has identified as cosmic justice. She is brilliant. She asks questions all day. She follows Naruto on his morning rounds through the village, 4 steps behind, asking why about everything. Why does the baker make the bread in that shape? Papa. Why is the river slower in summer? Why does the man at the dry cleaner have only one arm? Why are the lanterns red on the 3rd Street and white on the 4th? He answers every question. This is the thing that surprises people the most about him in the epilogue, how patient he is with her specifically. The man who ended Madara Uchiha with his bare hands crouches down in the street in his Hokage robes to explain to his daughter why the baker shapes the bread in long, thin loaves. Because the loaves take less oven space and feed a family for 2 days, and the bakery has limited oven space, and decisions in life are usually about limited space and the families they have to feed. She nods. She files it. She asks why the 3rd Street's lanterns are red. He stands. They keep walking. He answers that one too. The 2nd child is a boy. He is 5. His name is Sora. He runs hot, not dragon hot, but the kind of warm that makes winter afternoons easier when you sit next to him on the couch. He can manifest small flames in his palms. He scared himself with it the first time, when he was 3. He had been trying to make a paper boat float in a basin, and the boat had set itself on fire, and he had screamed, and the basin had begun to bubble. Naruto, who had been in the next room, had come in. He had picked the boy up. He had held the small hands in his own, and he had shown him how to let the fire breathe, and the fire had settled into a small flame that hovered an inch above each palm, content with itself. The boy looks at his father with the kind of faith that children have in things they love before the world tells them to be careful about it. Naruto is good with that faith. He does not take it lightly. He trains every morning. The village sees him on the training ground before sunrise. Sometimes students come to watch, young genin, fresh from the academy, who have grown up hearing the stories the same way every generation hears the great stories. They arrive in groups of 3 or 4. They stand at the edge of the training ground in the early morning gray and watch. He usually does not invite them in. One morning, in the 7th year of his tenure, a girl of 11 climbed over the fence, walked to the center of the ground, and stood next to him with her arms at her sides and her jaw set. He looked at her. "You should be at the academy. It is 5 in the morning. The academy is closed." A pause. "You want to learn something?" "I want to learn everything." He looked at her for a long time. His eyes in the early morning were the same blue they had been for most of the last decade. The crimson there, settled, no longer burning unless something earned it. He was 18 years older than she was. He carried more than she would understand for years. "Come back tomorrow." Earlier. She came back the next day. Earlier. Every day after that, she was the first student he took officially. Others followed. There were never many, 5 total across the rest of his career. He was selective the way people with real standards are selective. The 5 he took were extraordinary. They knew it was because he had seen something in them. They trained every day trying to be worthy of being seen that way. The girl from the fence was the first. She would, 20 years later, be the 7th Hokage of the village. Her speech at her inauguration would consist of 3 sentences. The 3rd sentence would be, "He gave me my chance, and I am giving you yours." The whole village would understand who he was without his name being said. That speech was 20 years away. This is now. It is a Wednesday evening. The lanterns are coming on. The village is settling into the long, slow warm of an autumn night. Naruto is on the Hokage monument. He is on the 4th Hokage's head. He has been there for an hour. He has no specific reason to be there. He came up here without a meeting. He came up here without a report. He came up here because he wanted to look at the village. Sasuke finds him. They are adults now. They have been adults for a long time. Sasuke has a wife. Sasuke has a daughter. Sasuke teaches at the academy 2 days a week and runs the village's external intelligence operations on the other 5. Sasuke is not entirely happy. Sasuke is not entirely unhappy. Sasuke is, in the honest part of himself, content, which is more than he ever expected to be. He climbs up the monument the long way on foot because he likes the climb. He comes up over the side. He sees Naruto. He walks across the carved stone of his father figure's head and stops next to his oldest friend. He looks out at the village, still watching it. Always. A pause. Sasuke puts his hands in his pockets, which is something he started doing a few years ago, in a way he will deny is an imitation. They stand the same way. They look at the same view. You could leave. You could go anywhere. You know that. I know. Why don't you? Naruto looks at the village. The lanterns coming on as the evening starts. The smoke from 1,000 chimneys. Children in the street. The sound of someone laughing somewhere, for a reason he cannot see and does not need to know. He thinks, for 1 second, about a 7-year-old bleeding in a mud clearing in the forest of death who refused to die. He thinks about a king who fell through a tear in the sky looking for a vessel. He thinks about every name on the list, every line crossed off, every body that went down in fire and silence in a field or a cave or a beach. He thinks about a small hand in his warm, trusting, on a morning walk through the 3rd Street. He thinks about the paper flowers on his desk. He thinks about a girl asleep across his desk with his jacket over her shoulders. He thinks about a boy who can hold fire in his palms and looks at him as if the world is a thing his father has personally guaranteed. He thinks about a teacher who framed 2 letters and put them behind his desk. He thinks about an old man with white hair who at 65 still climbs into bedroom windows and still complains about it the next morning. He thinks about a brother who came home in the rain and stayed. He thinks about a goddess in a vault. He thinks about a sword on a rock above a tide line. He thinks about a village that is every morning still here when he wakes up. Because it's mine, he says, not in the way an emperor owns a country, in the way a dragon owns its mountain. Sasuke nods. He does not say anything else. They stand there together. The wind picks up. It carries the smell of pine and wood smoke and dinner cooking in 1,000 homes. The first stars come out above the horizon. The village glows below them like 1,000 lanterns floating in the dark. The king of dragons is home.
And that is how one boy with crimson eyes and a love for ramen became the most terrifying being to ever walk this world. If you slept on this story, wake the hell up. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications, because this is just the beginning.